The night Eliza Rowan collapsed at the Blackridge ball, the entire duchy held its breath. One moment, the forgotten duchess stood pale and swaying beneath the crystal chandeliers. The next, Duke Adrian Voss, the man who'd never touched his wife in public, who treated her like furniture, was shoving through nobility like they were nothing, his face twisted with something no one had ever seen before: fear. What happened in those 12 seconds changed everything. But to understand that moment, you need to know how two people built a marriage on ice and what it took to finally shatter it. Stay until the end to see how their story transforms. Drop a comment with your city below and hit that like button if you believe love can break even the coldest heart. The study smelled like old leather and older decisions. Adrian Voss stood at the window watching sleet hammer against the glass. Behind him, his solicitor shuffled papers with the enthusiasm of a man preparing a funeral. "The Rowan family has accepted your terms, Your Grace." Adrian didn't turn. "All of them?" "Every clause. The girl arrives tomorrow." The girl. Not a name, not a person, just another line item in the desperate mathematics of survival. Blackridge Manor was dying. Not the romantic, poetic kind of decay that poets wrote about. The real kind. The kind with rotting timbers, empty coffers, and tenant families leaving in the night because they couldn't survive another winter. The kind where a duke's title meant exactly nothing if he couldn't keep the roofs from caving in. Adrian had fought it for 3 years, sold everything that wasn't nailed down, dismissed half the staff, worked 18-hour days managing properties, negotiating loans, visiting every landholder who might extend credit. He'd done everything except the one thing everyone kept suggesting: marry. "The bloodline must continue," his mother had said, right before she died. Not "I love you," not "I'm proud," just that cold directive delivered like a military order. So here he was, 34 years old, purchasing a wife like she was livestock. The solicitor cleared his throat. "The terms are quite stark, Your Grace, if I may say so." "You may not." But they were stark. Adrian had written them himself, making everything painfully clear. This was a transaction. Produce an heir, maintain appearances, expect nothing beyond the arrangement. He'd stripped every shred of romance from the contract until it read like a business merger, which was exactly what it was. "She's 19, the solicitor offered weakly. "The family says she's quiet, well-mannered. I don't care if she's a trained seal as long as she can bear children." Adrian finally turned, his face carved from the same granite as his crumbling manor. "Is the dowry secured?" "Yes, Your Grace, though it's modest." Modest meant pathetic. The Rowans were gentry, barely. One step above farmers scrambling to marry their daughter up before their own debts dragged them under. They were desperate. He was desperate. It was a perfect match. Adrian dismissed the solicitor and poured himself whiskey in the fading afternoon light. The study was one of the few rooms he still heated. Everything else in Blackridge had gone cold years ago, including, if he was honest, whatever passed for his heart. He'd loved once, or thought he had. Catherine Morse, daughter of an earl, all golden hair and sweet promises. They'd been engaged. He'd been 26 and stupid enough to believe in futures that didn't require ledgers. Then his father died, and the debts came crawling out like rats from the walls. Catherine took one look at the reality of Blackridge and ran straight into the arms of a viscount with actual money. That was the last time Adrian let emotion interfere with survival. The next morning came too fast. He stood in the Great Hall, a space that used to host 100 guests but now echoed like a tomb, and watched the carriage approach through windows that desperately needed new glass. Mrs. Calloway, his housekeeper, fussed beside him. She was one of the few staff who'd stayed, more out of stubbornness than loyalty. "You could at least smile, Your Grace." "Why?" "Because the poor girl is about to become your wife. The poor girl is about to become a duchess. I'd say she's getting the better end of this arrangement." Mrs. Calloway made a noise that suggested she had opinions, but knew better than to share them. The carriage stopped. Adrian straightened his coat, one of 3 he still owned, and prepared himself. The door opened. Eliza Rowan stepped out like she was walking to her own execution. She wasn't beautiful, not in the way Catherine had been, all confidence and carefully arranged features. Eliza was plain. Dark hair pulled back too severely, a dress that had been mended at the sleeves, brown eyes that looked at everything except him. She was also terrified. Adrian saw it in the way her hands gripped her small trunk, in the set of her shoulders, in the careful blankness of her expression. She'd learned to hide it well, but he'd spent years reading people across negotiating tables. Fear had a particular quality. "Miss Rowan." He descended the steps. "Welcome to Blackridge." She curtsied. It was technically perfect and completely lifeless. "Your Grace." Her voice was quiet, colorless. "Mrs. Calloway will show you to your rooms. We'll dine at 8. The ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow at noon." "Yes, Your Grace." She didn't ask questions, didn't look around, just followed Mrs. Calloway inside like a prisoner being led to a cell. Adrian watched her go and felt nothing, which was perfect. Nothing was safe. Nothing couldn't hurt you. That evening, he buried himself in estate accounts until his eyes burned. The numbers were brutal. Even with the Rowan dowry, he was barely holding the bleeding. He needed that heir, needed the legitimacy it would bring, the confidence it would restore in his creditors. A son would prove Blackridge wasn't finished, would prove the Voss line continued. Everything else was irrelevant. At 8 o'clock, he went to dinner. The dining room was another space hemorrhaging grandeur. The table could seat 30, but was set for 2, down at one end, like they were strangers forced to share a park bench. Eliza was already there. She'd changed into a different dress, this one slightly less mended, and sat with her hands folded, staring at the empty plate in front of her. Adrian took his seat. "I trust your rooms are adequate." "Yes, Your Grace." "You'll find Blackridge somewhat austere. We've made necessary economies." "I understand, Your Grace." The staff brought soup. It was thin. Adrian had eaten worse. "The ceremony tomorrow will be brief," he continued, "just the local vicar and necessary witnesses. I saw no point in spectacle." "No, Your Grace." He looked at her properly for the first time. She was eating mechanically, like it was a task to complete rather than a meal to enjoy. Her face remained carefully neutral. "You understand the terms of our arrangement?" Finally, her eyes lifted. They were darker than he'd thought. Not warm. There was nothing warm about Eliza Rowan, but deep, like looking into a well. "I've read the contract, Your Grace." "And you accept it?" "I'm here, aren't I?" There was the faintest edge to her voice. Not defiance exactly, just fact. Adrian found himself unexpectedly curious. "Why?" "Why what, Your Grace?" "Why accept? You're 19. Your family could have found you someone less." He gestured vaguely at the decaying room around them. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Then it was gone. "My family has 4 daughters and no sons, Your Grace. I'm the eldest. We have debts." "You offered a solution." She set down her spoon with precise care. "I understand what I am to you. You've been quite clear. And that doesn't trouble you? Would it matter if it did?" No, it wouldn't. They both knew it. Adrian went back to his soup. "As long as we understand each other." "Perfectly, Your Grace." The rest of the meal passed in silence. The wedding was exactly as promised. Brief, cold, and efficient. Eliza wore a simple dress. Adrian wore his military uniform from his brief stint in the cavalry because it was the only formal clothing he owned that didn't have moth holes. The vicar spoke the words, they repeated them. Adrian slid a ring onto her finger, his grandmother's ring, because buying a new one was an unnecessary expense. "You may kiss the bride." He pressed his lips to hers for exactly 2 seconds. Her mouth was soft and unresponsive, like kissing a portrait. "Congratulations, Your Grace." "Your Grace." And that was it. Eliza Rowan became Eliza Voss, Duchess of Blackridge. They spent their wedding night in separate bedrooms. Adrian had been clear about that too. The marriage needed to be consummated eventually. That was the entire point. But there was no rush. He had work to do, accounts to manage, a property inspection scheduled for the next morning. Sex could wait until it was strategically necessary. He told himself this was logical, practical, the kind of clear-headed thinking that had kept Blackridge from complete collapse. He didn't tell himself he was a coward. A week passed. Eliza moved through Blackridge like a ghost. Adrian would see her occasionally, a figure in the hall, a shadow in the library. She never asked for anything, never complained, just existed in the spaces between his daily routine. Mrs. Calloway, however, had plenty to say. "The girl's freezing in that wing, Your Grace." Adrian didn't look up from his correspondence. "Then she should request more coal." "She won't ask." "That's not my problem." "She's your wife. She's a grown woman who can speak for herself." He signed a letter with more force than necessary. "If she needs something, she knows where to find me." Mrs. Calloway left muttering things that would have gotten any other servant dismissed. But she was right about one thing. Eliza never asked for anything. She also never intruded. Adrian had expected something. Demands for attention, perhaps. Tears about the loveless marriage. Some kind of feminine emotion that would require management. Instead, Eliza simply adapted. He'd find evidence of her presence, a book moved in the library, a chair repositioned near a window, but never the woman herself. She timed her movements to avoid him, eating earlier or later, walking in different corridors. It was exactly what he'd wanted. So why did it irritate him? 2 weeks after the wedding, he found her in the conservatory. It was a space he never used, too expensive to heat, full of dead plants his mother had once cultivated. But there was Eliza, kneeling beside a withered rose bush, her hands in the frozen soil. "What are you doing?" She startled, nearly dropping her trowel. "I'm sorry, Your Grace. I didn't think anyone used this room." "I don't." "I can leave. Answer the question." She looked down at the plant. "Some of these might be salvageable, if they're pruned properly, given water and light." "They're dead." "Not all of them." Her voice was quiet but firm. "Some are just dormant." Adrian moved closer despite himself. The conservatory was freezing, her breath visible in small clouds. She wore gloves with holes in the fingertips. "This is a waste of time." "Perhaps." She didn't stop working. "But it's my time to waste, isn't it?" There was that edge again, so faint he almost missed it. "The estate has actual needs, Miss Duchess. If you want to be useful, Mrs. Calloway could use help with inventory." "I've already completed the inventory, Your Grace, and reorganized the linen storage, and cataloged the library." She finally looked up at him. "I'm quite capable of doing multiple things." He stared at her. In 2 weeks, he'd barely spoken to his wife beyond necessary pleasantries. He'd assumed she spent her days doing whatever useless things gentry women did. Embroidery. Letter writing. Not working. "You cataloged the library?" It was in disarray. "That library has 5,000 volumes. 5,247, actually. You're missing several from the natural philosophy section. I've made a list if you'd like to track them down." Adrian didn't know what to say to that. Eliza returned to her rose bush, dismissing him without a word. He left feeling distinctly off balance. That night he went to the library. Sure enough, everything had been reorganized. Not just sorted, actually cataloged, with neat labels and a handwritten index waiting on the main table. The handwriting was precise, efficient, like everything else about her. Adrian sat down and opened the index. She'd noted not just titles and authors, but conditions: water damage, loose bindings, missing pages. At the bottom of the last page, she'd written, "Recommend prioritizing repairs to the following 17 volumes as they represent the most valuable and deteriorated items." 17 volumes, with estimated repair costs listed beside each one. He found himself reading through her notes, then actually going to check the books she'd flagged. She was right. All of them needed work. Some were genuinely valuable. First editions he could potentially sell if things got desperate enough. How had she known? The next morning he found her in the estate office. "What are you doing in here?" Eliza looked up from a stack of tenant records, completely unrepentant. "Your filing system is catastrophic, Your Grace." "Excuse me?" "You have documents from 1802 mixed with current leases. Your debt records are scattered across 4 different locations. And someone, I'm assuming old Stuart Morris, based on the handwriting, has been recording expenses in 3 different formats." She held up a ledger. "This is illegible." Adrian felt heat rising in his face. "Those are private estate documents." "I'm the Duchess of Blackridge. The estate is my concern, too." "Your concern is to produce an heir." "I'm capable of doing both." She said it so calmly, like they were discussing the weather, like she hadn't just called his entire organizational system catastrophic. Adrian crossed to the desk and snatched the ledger from her hands. You overstep. Do I? Eliza stood, meeting his eyes for the first time with something other than blank politeness. You wanted a wife who wouldn't be a burden, who would fulfill her duties and stay out of your way. I'm doing exactly that. If I also happen to fix your filing system while I'm avoiding you, I'd think you'd call that efficient. I didn't ask for your help. You didn't ask for anything except an heir. Her voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath. Everything else, Your Grace, is mine to decide. They stared at each other. Adrian realized distantly that this was the longest conversation they'd ever had, that he'd never noticed the stubborn set of her jaw or the way her eyes went flat when she was angry, that she was angry. He should shut this down, remind her of her place, assert control. Instead, he heard himself say, the filing system isn't catastrophic. It's a disaster. It's functional. By what definition? I can find what I need. Can you? She pulled another ledger. Find the lease agreement for the Miller property. Expires this month. You'll need to renegotiate. Adrian went to the cabinet where it should be. It wasn't there. Eliza waited. He checked the next drawer, the shelf, the secondary files. Nothing. Third cabinet, she said quietly. Bottom drawer. Filed under M but dated 1819, so you wouldn't have thought to look there. He found it exactly where she said. When he turned back, Eliza was already returning to her work. I'll have this organized by week's end, Your Grace. You're welcome to review my system and reject it if you find it unsuitable. She didn't look at him. Will that be all? Adrian left without answering. He told himself he was angry, that she'd overstepped, invaded his space, made assumptions about his management. But that night, lying in his bed, staring at the ceiling, he found himself thinking about the way she'd said, I'm capable of doing both. Like it was a challenge, like she was daring him to see her as something other than a womb with a pulse. A month into the marriage, Adrian realized Blackridge was changing. Small things at first. The conservatory had heat. Not much, but enough to keep frost from killing the plants Eliza was systematically reviving. The library stayed warmer too, the drafts mysteriously sealed. Then larger things. The tenant records were immaculate. The household accounts balanced to the penny. Staff who'd been sullen and resentful started working with something resembling efficiency. And everywhere he looked, there was evidence of Eliza. She'd negotiated better rates with the coal supplier, reorganized the kitchen to reduce waste, started a rotation system for the remaining servants that somehow meant everyone worked less but accomplished more. She did all of this without asking his permission, without, apparently, needing him at all. Adrian found it infuriating. He also found it effective. The Duchess is quite something, his solicitor remarked during one visit. Already the talk of the county. Adrian looked up sharply. What are they saying? That she's transformed Blackridge. That she's got the household running like it hasn't in years. The solicitor smiled. Quite the catch, Your Grace. However did you find her? Adrian thought about Eliza kneeling in frozen dirt, her breath misting in the air, telling him some things were just dormant. Luck, he said flatly. That night, he decided it was time. They'd been married a month, long enough for her to settle in, long enough for him to fulfill the terms of their contract. He went to her room, knocked. Come in. Eliza was at her desk, writing letters. She looked up, surprised. Your Grace? It's time we discuss the physical requirements of our arrangement. He said it clinically, professionally, the way you discuss a business merger. Eliza's face went carefully blank. I see. Tomorrow night. My chambers. As you wish, Your Grace. She turned back to her letters, dismissing him. Adrian stood there, waiting for what? Nerves? Questions? Some kind of feminine anxiety about the wedding night they'd never had? Instead, Eliza just kept writing, her pen moving steadily across the paper, like he'd asked her to review a contract, not come to his bed. Is there anything else, Your Grace? No. He left, feeling even more off balance than usual. The next evening came too quickly. Adrian prepared mechanically, bathed, dressed in his simplest clothing, told himself this was just another task to complete. When Eliza knocked on his door, he almost didn't answer. "Come in." She entered wearing a nightgown that covered her from neck to toe. Her hair was down for the first time since he'd met her, dark and longer than he'd expected. She looked young, too young. "Should I?" She gestured vaguely at the bed. "Yes." Eliza climbed onto the mattress with all the enthusiasm of someone preparing for surgery. Adrian extinguished most of the lamps, joined her. They lay there in the darkness. "I've never—" Eliza's voice was very quiet. "I don't know what you expect. I expect you to lie still." That came out harsher than intended. But it was true. This wasn't about pleasure or connection. This was about biology, about continuing the line, about survival. He touched her shoulder. She flinched. "Relax." "I'm trying." She wasn't. Her entire body was rigid, braced for pain. Adrian had done many cold, calculated things in his life. He dismissed loyal servants, sold family heirlooms, let friendships die for the sake of the estate. But this felt different, worse. "Eliza." She turned her head, surprised. He never used her name. "This doesn't have to hurt." "Doesn't it?" There was something in her voice. Not quite bitter, just resigned. Like she'd spent her whole life expecting pain and had learned to endure it quietly. Something twisted in Adrian's chest. Something uncomfortable and unwanted. "Not if we're careful." "Then be careful, Your Grace." It wasn't permission exactly, more like acceptance. Adrian was careful. As careful as he knew how to be, which admittedly wasn't much. He'd had experience before Catherine, but those had been different circumstances. Different women. None of them had felt like this. Eliza made one small sound, not quite pain, not quite anything else, and then went silent. She kept her eyes closed, her hands fisted in the sheets. When it was over, Adrian rolled away immediately. "You can go." She left without a word. Adrian lay in the darkness, listening to her footsteps fade down the hall, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Shame. The next morning, Eliza appeared at breakfast looking exactly the same as always. Calm, contained, untouchable. "Good morning, Your Grace." "Good morning." She ate her toast. He drank his coffee. Neither of them mentioned the night before. It became a pattern. Every few nights, Adrian would summon her. She would come, endure, and leave. No conversation, no connection. Just the mechanical fulfillment of their contract. Exactly what he'd wanted, exactly what was killing him. Because the rest of the time, Eliza was transforming Blackridge. The estate that had been dying when she arrived was beginning, impossibly, to heal. She'd started a vegetable garden that actually produced food, negotiated payment plans with creditors that Adrian had considered lost causes, even convinced some of the departed staff to return. The manor still echoed, still crumbled in places, but it no longer felt like a mausoleum. It felt like something that might possibly survive. And she did all of it without asking him for anything, without needing his approval or input or even acknowledgement. She just worked. Adrian would find her in the estate office late at night, reviewing accounts by candlelight. In the kitchen, teaching cook new recipes that stretched their limited supplies. In the village, visiting tenants, listening to their problems, finding solutions. She moved through his world like water, filling cracks he hadn't even noticed, making everything stronger without making a sound. It should have been perfect. Instead, it was unbearable. 2 months into the marriage, Mrs. Calloway cornered him. "You need to talk to your wife, Your Grace." "About what?" "About the fact that she exists." Adrian looked up from his breakfast. "I'm aware she exists." "Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you treat her like a particularly efficient piece of furniture." "Mrs. Calloway, that girl works herself to exhaustion every single day making this place livable. She never complains, never asks for anything, and you barely look at her." The old housekeeper's voice was sharp. "What exactly do you think is going to happen?" "What's going to happen is that we'll continue our arrangement as agreed. She knows the terms. She's 19 years old. She's an adult who made a choice." "Did she?" Mrs. Calloway leaned on the table. "Or did her family make it for her, just like yours made it for you?" Adrian felt his jaw tighten. "That's enough." "Is it?" Because I've watched you, Your Grace. I've watched you turn yourself into stone because you think feeling anything is weakness. And now you've married a girl who deserves better, and you're doing the same thing to her. I never promised her better. No, you just promised her nothing at all. Mrs. Calloway left. Adrian sat alone, his breakfast cold in front of him, and hated that she was right. He'd promised Eliza nothing, and she'd asked for nothing. So why did it feel like he was stealing something precious every time he touched her? That night, he went to her room again, knocked. Come in. Eliza was reading. She set down her book immediately, her face going to that neutral mask. Your Grace. Adrian stopped. What was he doing here? I wanted to ask if you needed anything. She blinked. I'm sorry? For your comfort, the household, whatever you require. I have everything I need, Your Grace. Do you? Eliza studied him, confused. Is something wrong? Everything, nothing. He didn't know anymore. The estate is running better since you arrived. Thank you, Your Grace. You've done good work. I'm glad you think so. This was excruciating. Adrian had negotiated multi-thousand-pound deals with more ease than this simple conversation. Is there anything else? Eliza asked quietly. Yes. No. He had no idea. I'll see you tomorrow. He fled. Behind him, he heard the softest sound, like maybe Eliza had started to say something, then thought better of it. But when he turned back, her door was already closed. 3 months in, Eliza collapsed. Not at the ball. That came later. This was smaller, private. Adrian found her in the estate office, unconscious on the floor, papers scattered around her. His heart stopped. Eliza. He was on his knees, pulling her into his lap, checking for breathing, for pulse, for anything. Her eyes fluttered open. Your Grace? What happened? I think I just fainted. I haven't eaten today. I was working and forgot. You forgot to eat? She tried to sit up. He held her down. When was the last time you ate properly? Yesterday breakfast, I think. Yesterday? Adrian felt rage burning through his veins. Not at her, at himself. You've been working yourself unconscious and you didn't think to mention it? I didn't want to be a burden. A burden? He stared at her. You think eating makes you a burden. You've made sacrifices for this estate. I can too. You're my wife. The words came out raw, loud. Eliza flinched. Adrian forced himself to breathe. You're my wife. Your health is my concern. Is it? Those 2 quiet words hit harder than any accusation. Was it his concern? Had he done anything at all to make her think he cared whether she lived or died, beyond what she could give him? Come on. He stood, pulling her with him. You're going to eat, now. Your Grace, I have work. The work can wait. He half carried her to the kitchen, bullied cook into producing bread and soup, and stood over Eliza while she ate. She did it mechanically, just like everything else. When were you going to tell me? He asked quietly. Tell you what? That you're pregnant. Eliza's spoon clattered into her bowl. Adrian had suspected for a week. The signs were subtle but present. He'd been married before, well, nearly married, and Catherine had talked endlessly about such things. But he'd wanted Eliza to tell him. She hadn't. How did you know? Her voice was barely audible. I'm observant. Are you? There was an edge now, sharp and cutting. Eliza, you don't look at me, Your Grace. You don't speak to me beyond necessity. You summon me to your bed like I'm staff and dismiss me just as quickly. She stood, trembling. So forgive me if I didn't rush to share the news that I've fulfilled my primary function in this arrangement. That's not fair. Isn't it? Her eyes blazed, the first real emotion he'd seen from her in months. You made it very clear what you wanted from this marriage. An heir. Well, congratulations. You're getting one. She walked out. Adrian sat in the kitchen, surrounded by the smell of soup and his own stupidity, and finally understood. He'd gotten exactly what he wanted, and it was destroying them both. The pregnancy changed nothing and everything. Adrian told himself it was a relief, the primary objective achieved, one step closer to securing Blackridge's future. He should have felt satisfaction, maybe even pride. Instead, he felt like he'd swallowed glass. Eliza didn't speak to him for 3 days after the kitchen confrontation. She moved through the manor like always, working, organizing, managing, but now, when their paths crossed, she looked straight through him. It was worse than her careful politeness. On the 4th day, he found her in the morning room, sitting very still, one hand pressed to her stomach. "Are you well?" She didn't look up. "Perfectly fine, Your Grace." "You're pale." "I'm often pale." "Eliza?" "The Fletcher lease needs renewal. I've left the papers on your desk." Her voice was flat, professional. "The terms are fair. I recommend you sign it." "I'm not here about leases." "Then why are you here?" "Good question." Adrian didn't have an answer. He watched her sitting there, backlit by weak winter sun, and realized he'd never actually looked at her before. Not really. He'd cataloged features, plain, forgettable, adequate, and stopped there. But now he saw the way exhaustion bruised the skin beneath her eyes, the thinness of her wrists, the careful way she held herself, like something might break if she moved too quickly. "You should rest more." "I'll rest when the work is done." "The work is never done." "Then I suppose I'll never rest." She finally looked at him, and her eyes were empty. "Was there something else, Your Grace?" "Yes." "No." "Everything." "I want you to see the physician." "I'm fine." "You fainted 4 days ago, and I've been perfectly well since." Eliza stood, smoothing her skirts. "I appreciate your concern, but it's unnecessary. I know what's expected of me. I won't damage your investment." The words landed like a slap. "That's not, isn't it?" She moved past him toward the door. "Excuse me, I have inventory to complete." Adrian stood alone in the morning room and wondered when exactly everything had gone so wrong. Mrs. Calloway found him an hour later, still standing there. "Brooding won't fix it, Your Grace." "I wasn't brooding. You've been staring at that wall for 20 minutes. Adrian turned. "She won't talk to me." "Can you blame her?" "I'm trying." "Trying what? To feel something?" Mrs. Calloway's expression was sharp. "That girl is carrying your child and working herself to death to prove she's worth keeping, and you're surprised she won't chat with you over tea." "I never asked her to work like this." "You never asked her for anything except an heir. So she's giving you that and everything else she thinks might make you see her as human." The housekeeper shook her head. "The tragedy, Your Grace, is that you're too blind to notice." She left before he could respond. Adrian went back to his study and tried to bury himself in work. But the numbers blurred. The letters made no sense. All he could see was Eliza's face, that terrible blankness when she'd called herself an investment. He'd done that. He'd reduced a living, breathing woman to a transaction, and she'd learned the lesson so well she was destroying herself to fulfill it. That night, he went to her room. Knocked. No answer. "Eliza?" Still nothing. Adrian opened the door. She was asleep at her desk, her head pillowed on a stack of correspondence. In the candlelight, she looked younger than 19. Fragile. He stood there, useless, watching her breathe. Then he saw what she'd been writing. Letters. Dozens of them. To creditors, suppliers, neighboring estates, all in her precise handwriting, all on behalf of Blackridge. One caught his eye, a draft with multiple crossouts and revisions. "Dear Lord Ashford, I write regarding the outstanding debt owed by the Blackridge estate. I understand the amount is considerable and long overdue. However, I believe we can reach an arrangement beneficial to both parties." She'd been negotiating his debts without telling him. Adrian picked up another letter, then another, each one carefully crafted, each one offering solutions he hadn't thought of, compromises he hadn't considered. She'd been doing this for weeks, maybe months. He looked at Eliza, slumped over her work, and something cracked in his chest. Very carefully, he lifted her. She made a small sound of protest but didn't wake. He carried her to his bed, noting distantly how light she was, how she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose, and covered her with blankets. She curled into the warmth immediately, still sleeping. Adrian stood there in the darkness, listening to her breathe, and faced the truth he'd been avoiding. He'd married this woman thinking she was nothing. He'd been catastrophically wrong. The next morning, Eliza woke in her bed with no memory of getting there. She sat up slowly, disoriented. The last thing she remembered was writing letters, fighting nausea, trying to finish just one more. The letters. They were gone from her desk. Panic flooded through her. Those were important, private. She'd been working on them for weeks, trying to find the right words, the right approach. A knock at the door. "Come in," she called, her voice rough with sleep. Adrian entered carrying a breakfast tray. Eliza stared. "You were working late," he said, setting the tray on her desk.
"I thought you might be hungry." Thank you, Your Grace." He didn't leave, just stood there, looking uncomfortable in her space. "I read your letters." Eliza's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry. I should have consulted you first. I overstepped. They're brilliant." She stopped mid-apology. "What?" "Your letters, the negotiations. I've been fighting with Ashford for 2 years over that debt. You found a solution in 3 paragraphs. Adrian looked at her directly for the first time in weeks. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you didn't ask." The words came out sharper than intended, but Eliza was tired, bone-tired, and sick of pretending everything was fine. "I'm asking now." "Are you?" She stood, wrapping her shawl tighter. "Or are you just surprised that your investment has skills beyond childbearing?" Adrian flinched. "Don't. Don't what? Don't state facts?" Eliza felt something hot and reckless rising in her chest. Months of swallowed words, of careful silence, of pretending she didn't feel anything at all. "You made it very clear what you wanted from me, Your Grace. I'm simply fulfilling the contract." "This isn't about the contract. Everything is about the contract." Her voice broke. "Everything in this marriage is a calculation. You've made sure of that. So forgive me if I don't understand why you suddenly care how I spend my time." "I care because you're killing yourself." The words echoed in the small room. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, visibly frustrated. "You work 18-hour days. You skip meals. You fainted, Eliza, and you're carrying a child. Your child. Our child. Is it?" She laughed bitterly. "Because from where I'm standing, I'm just the vessel, the inconvenient necessity required to continue your bloodline. That's not true." "Isn't it? Tell me, Your Grace, when was the last time you looked at me and saw a person? Not a duchess, not a womb, just me." Silence. Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. That was answer enough. Eliza turned away, blinking back tears she refused to let fall. "The breakfast was kind. Thank you, but I have work to do." "Eliza, please leave." He did, and Eliza sat at her desk, staring at nothing, and wondered how much longer she could survive this.
The next week passed in tense silence. Adrian tried. He attempted conversation at meals, awkward, stilted things about weather and estate business. Eliza responded politely and said nothing real. He stopped summoning her at night, told himself it was consideration for her condition, knew it was cowardice. Meanwhile, Blackridge continued its slow transformation. The tenants who'd been sullen and resentful now greeted the Duchess with genuine warmth. Eliza had visited each family, listened to their complaints, found solutions to problems Adrian hadn't even known existed. She'd negotiated a deal with a neighboring estate to share harvest equipment, organized the village women into a sewing cooperative that actually turned a profit, somehow convinced the blacksmith to stay when he'd been planning to leave. The estate was healing, but his wife was withering. Adrian saw it in the way her dresses hung looser, in the careful way she moved, like everything hurt, in the shadows that never left her eyes. Mrs. Calloway cornered him again. "She needs to see a physician, Your Grace." "She won't go." "Make her." "I can't force her to do anything." The housekeeper's look was scathing. "You forced her into this marriage. You forced her into your bed. But now, when she actually needs help, you suddenly discover scruples." Adrian had no answer to that. That night he found Eliza in the library. She was reading a medical text, her face pale in the lamplight. "What are you doing?" She didn't look up. "Research." "On what?" "Childbirth. Complications. Mortality rates." Her voice was clinical, detached. "Did you know that 1 in 25 women die in childbirth, higher in rural areas? Higher still for first pregnancies. Adrian felt cold. Eliza, I'm preparing, Your Grace. That's what you want, isn't it? For me to be prepared? She finally looked at him, and her eyes were hollow. I'm very good at being prepared. You're terrifying yourself. I'm being practical, just like you taught me. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her this wasn't what he'd meant, wasn't what he'd wanted. But wasn't it? Hadn't he demanded exactly this? A wife who was practical, efficient, who wouldn't burden him with messy emotions? Come away from this, he said quietly. Why? Because reading mortality statistics won't help anything. Neither will ignorance. Eliza, he sat across from her, you're frightening yourself for no reason. You're young, healthy. Am I? She laughed without humor. I can't keep food down half the time. I'm exhausted constantly. And I'm doing all of this alone because my husband can't stand to look at me unless it's absolutely necessary. The accusation hung in the air. Adrian forced himself to hold her gaze. That's not true. Prove it. What? Prove it. Eliza closed her book. Tell me one thing about me that isn't related to the estate or your heir. One personal thing you've noticed. One conversation we've had that mattered. He searched his memory desperately. Came up empty. Eliza nodded like she'd expected it. That's what I thought. I know you like roses, he said suddenly. In the conservatory, you saved them. That's an action, not a person. I know you're brilliant with numbers, that you speak 3 languages, that you cataloged 5,000 books in 2 weeks. Those are skills, Your Grace, not me. Then tell me. The frustration burst out of him. Tell me who you are because you've spent 3 months hiding behind work and politeness and I can't what? Can't reach you. Eliza stared at him. Then, slowly, she smiled. It wasn't a happy expression. You're right, Your Grace. I've been hiding. Do you want to know why? She leaned forward. Because the real me, the person underneath all the work, is angry, furious actually, at my family for selling me, at you for buying me, at myself for hoping, even for a second, that this could be more than a transaction. Adrian felt like he'd been punched. I accepted this marriage because I had no choice, Eliza continued, her voice shaking. But I tried. I tried so hard to make myself useful, valuable, worth keeping. And you know what I learned? It doesn't matter. Nothing I do matters, because you don't see me. You see a function, a role to fill. That's not, it is. She stood. And I'm done pretending it isn't. So here's the truth, Your Grace. I am angry. I am lonely. I am terrified of dying in childbirth for a man who can barely remember my name, and I am so tired of being invisible. She walked out. Adrian sat in the library, surrounded by books she'd organized, in a house she'd saved, and finally understood the full weight of what he'd done. The scandal broke 3 days later. Adrian was in the village meeting with tenants when he overheard the gossip. Duchess, they say she's not even pregnant. Tricked him into marriage. Common blood, what did he expect? He stopped walking. 2 women stood by the well, heads together, voices low but carrying. My cousin works at Blackridge. Says the Duke won't even look at her. Keeps separate chambers. Well, of course, probably realized what he'd married. Shame, really. The girl works hard. But you can't make silk from cotton, can you? Adrian felt rage burning through his veins. Excuse me, ladies. They jumped, faces flushing as they recognized him. Your Grace, we were just slandering my wife. His voice was ice. I heard. No, Your Grace. We would never. The Duchess of Blackridge is pregnant with my child. She is also the reason half of you still have roofs over your heads. He looked at them until they couldn't meet his eyes. If I hear either of you spreading lies again, you'll find your lease agreements under review. Are we clear? They nodded, terrified. Adrian walked away, his hand shaking with fury. But the damage was spreading. By the time he returned to the manor, he'd heard 6 different versions of the gossip, each one uglier than the last. That Eliza had trapped him, that the child wasn't his, that she was a gold digger, a social climber, a scheming commoner who'd somehow fooled a duke. None of it was true. All of it was his fault. He found Mrs. Calloway in the kitchen. Does she know? The housekeeper nodded grimly. Heard it in the village this morning. Came back and locked herself in her room.
Where is she now? Still there. Adrian took the stairs 2 at a time. Eliza's door was closed. He knocked. Go away. Eliza said, I said, go away. He opened the door anyway. She was at the window, her back to him, shoulders rigid. I'm handling it, Adrian said. The gossip. I'll make sure everyone knows. Knows what? She turned and her face was ravaged. That I'm really pregnant? That you really married me? What does that change? It changes everything. It changes nothing. Her voice cracked. They're right, Adrian. I am common blood. I am beneath you. And you do keep separate chambers because you can't stand to be near me. It was the first time she'd used his name. It broke something in him. That's not true. Then why? She moved closer, tears streaming down her face. Why do you avoid me? Why do you look at me like I'm a stranger? Why did you marry me if you were just going to hate me for existing? I don't hate you. Then what? She was shouting now, all the careful control finally shattered. What do you feel, Adrian? Anything? Or am I just so far beneath notice that you can't even work up proper contempt? I feel everything. The words exploded out of him. Eliza stopped. Adrian stood there, breathing hard, everything he'd kept locked away for months suddenly spilling out. I feel everything, and it's destroying me, he said roughly. Every time I see you working yourself to death. Every time you look through me like I'm not there. Every time I remember that I did this to you, that I took a 19-year-old girl and turned her into this. Into what? Into someone who thinks she has to earn the right to exist. He was shaking. You shouldn't have to save the estate to be worth keeping. You shouldn't have to be brilliant or useful or perfect. You should just be. Eliza stared at him, tears still streaming. But I made you think otherwise, Adrian continued. I made you think love was transactional, that you had to prove your value, and then I got angry when you believed me. Why? Her voice was barely a whisper. Why did you do this? Because I'm a coward. The admission tasted like ash. Because Catherine left me and I decided feeling anything was weakness. So I built walls and I hid behind contracts and I convinced myself that survival was all that mattered. And now? Now I'm watching you survive me, and it's worse than anything I imagined. Silence fell. Eliza wiped her eyes with shaking hands. What do you want from me, Adrian? Everything. Nothing. He didn't know. I want you to stop killing yourself to make me notice you, he said finally. I want you to eat, to rest, to stop reading mortality statistics like you're planning your own funeral. And what will you give me in return? The question was fair, brutal, but fair. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know how to be what you need. I don't know how to fix this, but I'm trying to figure it out. Are you? Eliza looked at him, really looked, and he saw the hope there, fragile and desperate and terrifying. Because I can't survive on trying, Adrian. I can't survive on maybe you'll see me someday. I need to know if there's anything real here or if I should stop hoping. Eliza, is there anything here? She stepped closer. Anything at all, or am I just convenient? Adrian looked at this woman, this brilliant, stubborn, impossible woman who'd saved his estate and asked for nothing, and knew the truth. She was everything, but admitting it meant vulnerability, meant risk, meant potentially losing the control that had kept him alive for 3 years. The word stuck in his throat. Eliza's face shuddered. That's what I thought. She moved past him toward the door. Thank you for defending me in the village, Your Grace. I appreciate the gesture. Where are you going? For a walk. I need air. Eliza, wait. But she was already gone. Adrian stood in her room, surrounded by evidence of her work, her life, her desperate attempts to matter. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he was losing her. Not to death, to his own cowardice. The ball invitation arrived the next morning. Lord and Lady Ashford were hosting the county's winter social. 300 guests. Dancing, dinner, all the society ritual Adrian normally avoided. But refusing would cause talk. More talk. And Eliza deserved better than more gossip. We're going, he told her at breakfast. She looked up, surprised. To the ball? Yes. I don't think that's wise, Your Grace, given my condition.
You're 3 months along, barely showing. He kept his voice level. And I want the county to see us together, to know the gossip is false. So this is about appearances. This is about protecting you. Is it? Her voice was quiet. Or is it about protecting your investment? Adrian felt the hit, but didn't rise to it. We're going. That's final. Eliza went back to her tea. As you wish, Your Grace. The week before the ball was tense. Eliza threw herself into preparations, organizing their household staff for their absence, ensuring the estate would run smoothly, working even longer hours than usual. Adrian watched her push herself harder and harder and felt helpless to stop it. The night before the ball, he found her in her room, surrounded by dresses. None of them fit anymore. Her voice was flat. I've lost too much weight. Adrian looked at the gowns spread across her bed. All of them hung on her frame like sacks. We'll have something made. There's no time. Then we won't go. You said we had to go, for appearances. Damn appearances. He moved closer. You're exhausted. You can barely stand. We're not going. Eliza looked at him, and something flickered in her eyes. You'd cancel, even though refusing will cause more gossip? Yes? Why? Because you matter more than gossip. Because I can't watch you collapse again. Because I'm terrified of what I'm doing to you. Because you need rest, he said instead. The flicker died. I'll manage, Your Grace. I always do. She turned away, dismissing him. Adrian left, knowing he'd failed again. The night of the ball arrived cold and sharp. Eliza appeared in a dress she'd somehow altered to fit. It was dark blue, simple, elegant in its austerity. She'd done something to her hair, pulled it back in a way that made her look older, more severe, more like a duchess, less like herself. You look well, Adrian said. Thank you, Your Grace. The carriage ride was silent. Adrian sat across from Eliza, watching her stare out the window, and knew they were both dreading this. Walking into a room full of people who'd already judged her, who saw her as beneath him, who weren't entirely wrong. Not about her worth, they were catastrophically wrong about that, but about him deserving her. They were absolutely right. The Ashford estate blazed with lights. Eliza took Adrian's arm as they entered, her face carefully blank. He felt her trembling and wanted to turn around, take her home, protect her from this. But she'd never forgive him for the cowardice. So they walked in together. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to them. Adrian felt Eliza's grip tighten on his arm, saw her shoulders straighten. Then Lady Ashford swept forward, all false smiles. Your Grace, and dear Duchess Voss, how lovely to see you both. Lady Ashford, Adrian inclined his head. You must tell me all about married life. Though I confess, we've heard such interesting stories. All false, I assure you. His voice was ice. Lady Ashford's smile never wavered. Oh, of course. Though one does wonder, with such a quick marriage. The implication hung in the air. Adrian felt rage building, opened his mouth to destroy this woman. I assure you, Lady Ashford, Eliza said quietly, the only thing quick about our marriage was the ceremony. Everything else has been dreadfully slow. A few nearby guests laughed. Lady Ashford flushed. Well, how charming. She swept away. Adrian looked at Eliza. That was necessary. Her face was still blank. Shall we find our seats? The dinner was torture. Adrian sat beside Eliza at a table full of minor nobility who spent the entire meal making veiled comments about modern marriages and surprising unions while smiling like knives. Eliza endured it all with perfect grace. She barely ate. Adrian noticed. But she smiled, laughed at appropriate moments, played the role of Duchess so well that no one saw the exhaustion bleeding through. No one but him. After dinner came dancing. Adrian led Eliza to the floor for the first waltz. Her hand in his was ice cold. You're doing well, he murmured. I'm surviving. That's not the same thing, isn't it? She looked up at him, and her eyes were dull. Survival is all you've ever asked of me, Your Grace. I'm simply obliging. The music swelled. They turned in perfect synchronization, two strangers performing intimacy for an audience. I hate this, Adrian said suddenly. The dancing? All of it. Pretending, performing, watching them judge you. They're judging us both. and finding us wanting. Eliza stumbled slightly. He caught her. I'm fine. You're not. I will be. I just need... She went white. Eliza? I feel... Her words slurred. Strange. Adrian felt her weight shift, saw her eyes roll back, and then she was falling. He caught her before she hit the ground, his heart stopping in his chest. The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Adrian didn't hear them. He didn't hear anything except the silence where Eliza's breathing should have been. Eliza! Adrian's voice cut through the gasps and whispers like a blade. He went to his knees, cradling her against his chest, his fingers searching for a pulse at her throat. There. Faint, but present. Someone get a physician! He didn't recognize his own voice. Too raw, too desperate. Now! Lady Ashford fluttered nearby. Perhaps she just needs air. She needs a physician! Adrian looked up, and whatever the guests saw in his face made them scatter. Someone ride for Dr. Whitmore. Tell him it's an emergency. A footman ran. Adrian gathered Eliza closer, feeling how light she was, how cold. Her face was alabaster in the chandelier light, lips tinged blue. Your Grace, perhaps we should move her to a quieter room. Don't touch her. He stood, lifting Eliza like she weighed nothing, and the crowd parted before him. Status, propriety, appearances, all of it burned away in the face of pure terror. He carried her through the ballroom past 300 shocked witnesses and didn't care about a single one of them. A servant led him to a guest room. Adrian laid Eliza on the bed, his hands shaking as he checked her pulse again. Still there. Still too faint. Eliza. He smoothed hair back from her face. Come on, wake up. Nothing. Mrs. Ashford appeared in the doorway. Your Grace, I've sent for... Get out. I only want to help. Then leave me alone with my wife. She retreated. Adrian sat on the edge of the bed, holding Eliza's hand, and felt his entire world narrowing to this single point. Her breath, her pulse, the tiny movements that proved she was still alive. He'd known fear before, when his father died and the debts came crawling out. When Catherine left and he'd realized he was completely alone. When winter came and he'd wondered if Blackridge would survive another year. But this was different. This was the fear of losing something irreplaceable. I'm sorry. The words came out broken. I'm so sorry, Eliza. I should have listened. Should have made you rest. Should have... Her fingers twitched in his. Eliza? Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused. Adrian? Relief hit him like a physical blow. I'm here. What happened? You collapsed. His voice was rough. At the ball. You've been unconscious for... He glanced at the clock. 10 minutes. Oh. She tried to sit up. He pressed her back down. Don't move. I'm fine. You're not fine. It came out louder than he intended. You haven't been fine for months, and I've been too much of a coward to admit it. Eliza stared at him. Your Grace, Adrian. My name is Adrian. He was still holding her hand, gripping it like a lifeline. And I need you to tell me the truth. How long have you been feeling this way? What way? Weak, dizzy, like you're going to collapse. She looked away. A while. How long is a while? Since I found out I was pregnant. Adrian felt ice spreading through his chest. That was 6 weeks ago. Yes. You've been feeling faint for 6 weeks and you didn't tell me? You didn't want to know. Her voice was flat. You made that very clear. He had no defense. She was right. I was wrong. Eliza's eyes widened slightly. What? I was wrong. About all of it. The words felt like pulling shrapnel from a wound. I thought if I kept everything transactional, if I never let myself feel anything, I could survive. But all I've done is hurt you. Adrian, let me finish. He took a breath. I married you for survival, that's true. But somewhere along the way, you became more than that. And it terrified me. Because the last time I let myself care about someone, she destroyed me. Catherine. Yes. He'd never said her name to Eliza before. She left the moment things got difficult.
proved that love was just another weakness I couldn't afford. So I decided never to feel it again. And now? Now I'm sitting here realizing that not feeling anything didn't make me stronger. It just made me cruel. He looked at her directly. I broke you trying to protect myself, and I'm sorry. Silence fell. Eliza studied his face like she was trying to read a foreign language. What do you want from me? I want you to get better, to rest, to stop destroying yourself for an estate that isn't worth your life. His voice cracked. I want you to live, Eliza. Why? Because the answer stuck in his throat. All the walls he'd built, all the defenses he'd erected, and she was asking him to tear them down with one word. A knock interrupted. Dr. Whitmore entered, medical bag in hand. Your Graces, I came as quickly as possible. Adrian released Eliza's hand reluctantly. She collapsed during the ball, hasn't been eating properly. She's pregnant. The physician's expression sharpened. How far along? 3 months, Eliza said quietly. And you've been experiencing weakness? Dizziness? Yes. Dr. Whitmore began his examination. Adrian retreated to the window, giving them space but unable to leave entirely. He watched the physician check Eliza's pulse, her breathing, ask questions in a low voice. Finally, the doctor stood. Your Grace, might I speak with you privately? Adrian's stomach dropped. Anything you need to say can be said in front of my wife. Dr. Whitmore glanced at Eliza, then back to Adrian. Very well. The Duchess is severely malnourished and exhausted. Her pulse is weak, her blood pressure low. In her current condition, continuing the pregnancy poses significant risk. The room tilted. What kind of risk? Adrian's voice sounded distant to his own ears. To both her and the child. Her body is already struggling to sustain itself, adding the demands of pregnancy. The physician trailed off. I've seen cases like this before. They rarely end well. Then what do we do? Complete bed rest, immediately. No work, no stress, proper nutrition, and constant monitoring. Dr. Whitmore's tone was grave. Even then, the outcome is uncertain. The Duchess has pushed herself beyond what most women could endure. Recovery will take time. How much time? Weeks, possibly months. Adrian looked at Eliza. She was staring at the ceiling, her face blank. And if she doesn't rest, he asked, then I'd give her a month, maybe less. The physician packed his bag. The choice is hers, Your Grace, but make no mistake, this is a choice between survival and certain death. He left. Adrian moved to the bed on numb legs. Eliza, I heard him. Then you know what you need to do. Do I? She finally looked at him. He said the outcome is uncertain even with rest, that I might die anyway. Don't. Why not? It's the truth. Her voice was eerily calm. I could rest for months and still lose the baby, still die in childbirth, all that suffering for nothing. It wouldn't be for nothing, wouldn't it? She sat up slowly, her movements careful. Tell me, Adrian, if I lose this child, what happens to our marriage? The question hit like a fist. That's not, answer me. Her eyes were hard. If I can't give you an heir, am I still worth keeping? Of course you are. Prove it. How? Tell me you want me to survive for me, not for the estate, not for the bloodline, for me. She leaned forward. Can you do that? Adrian opened his mouth. The words wouldn't come, because the truth was complicated and ugly, and he didn't know how to untangle it. Yes, he wanted her to survive for herself, but also for Blackridge, for the future, for all the reasons he'd married her in the first place, plus 1,000 new ones he didn't have names for. Eliza saw his hesitation. Something broke in her expression. That's what I thought. She stood, swaying slightly. Thank you for your concern, Your Grace. I'll take it under advisement. Eliza, wait. I'm tired. I'd like to go home. There was no arguing with that tone. The carriage ride back to Blackridge was silent and suffocating. Eliza stared out the window. Adrian stared at her, watching the way she held herself so carefully still, like movement might shatter her. When they arrived, she went straight to her room. Adrian let her go. Then he went to his study, poured whiskey, and sat in the dark trying to figure out when exactly everything had gone so catastrophically wrong. The answer came quickly, from the beginning.
He treated their marriage like a business transaction, had convinced himself that emotions were weakness, that survival required ruthlessness. And now the woman he'd married, the woman who'd saved his estate, who'd worked herself to collapse, who'd asked for nothing, was dying because of it. A knock at the door. "Come in." Mrs. Calloway entered, her face grim. "I heard what the physician said." "Good news travels fast." "This isn't a joke, Your Grace." "I'm not laughing." Adrian drained his glass. "She won't rest. She'll keep working until it kills her, and I can't stop her." "Can't? Or won't? What's the difference?" "One is impossible. The other is cowardice." The housekeeper sat without being invited. "That girl has been breaking herself trying to earn your love for 3 months. Now she's dying, and you're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself instead of fighting for her." "I don't know how to fight for her." "Then learn." Mrs. Calloway's voice was sharp. "You learned how to save this estate, how to negotiate with creditors, how to survive winters that should have killed you. But the moment it requires actual emotion, you give up? This is different." "It's not. It's just harder." "Because saving the estate was about pride and duty, but saving her requires admitting you care, and that terrifies you." Adrian said nothing, because she was right. Mrs. Calloway stood. "You have a choice, Your Grace. You can let fear control you, watch your wife die, and spend the rest of your life alone. Or you can actually fight for something that matters." She left him with that. Adrian sat in the darkness for a long time. Then he made a decision. The next morning, he found Eliza in the estate office. Of course she was. "What are you doing?" She didn't look up from the ledgers. "Working." The physician said bed rest. The physician said a lot of things. Adrian crossed to the desk and closed the ledger. "You need to stop." "I'll stop when the work is done." "The work is never done." "You said that yourself." "Then I suppose I'll never stop." Eliza reached for the ledger. He moved it out of reach. "Your Grace, I'm hiring a steward." She froze. "What?" "A steward, to manage the estate. Someone competent who can handle the day-to-day operations." He kept his voice level. "You're relieved of all duties effective immediately." You can't do that. I'm the Duke. I can do whatever I want." Eliza stood, her face flushing with anger. "This is my work. I've spent months building these systems, and now someone else will maintain them." "Why?" "Because you're killing yourself." He moved closer. "And I won't watch it happen. So this is about control, about putting me back in my place. This is about keeping you alive." "For what?" She was shouting now. "So I can sit in my room doing nothing while you run the estate I saved? So I can be the decorative duchess who produces heirs and stays out of the way? So you can recover. I don't want to recover." The words burst out of her, raw and desperate. "I want to matter. I want to be useful. I want—" She stopped, breathing hard. Adrian waited. "I want you to see me," she finished quietly. "Just once. I want you to look at me and see a person worth fighting for, not because of what I can do, just because I do see you." "No, you don't. You see the estate. You see the heir. You see everything I've built, but not me." Tears were streaming down her face now. "And I can't survive that anymore, Adrian. I can't keep hoping you'll notice me. It's killing me faster than any pregnancy." Adrian felt something crack in his chest. "You want me to see you?" He closed the distance between them. "Fine. I see a woman who cataloged 5,000 books because she was bored, who saved a dying rose garden because she couldn't stand watching things wither, who negotiated with creditors I'd written off as hopeless and found solutions I never imagined. That's still just what I do. I see someone stubborn enough to organize my catastrophic filing system without permission, smart enough to speak 3 languages, brave enough to marry a stranger who treated her like furniture." His voice was rough. "I see someone who should have run screaming from Blackridge but stayed and made it beautiful anyway." Eliza stared at him. "I see you, Eliza. I've been seeing you for weeks, and it terrifies me because I don't know how to care about someone without it destroying me." He took a shaky breath. "But I'm willing to try, if you'll let me." "Why now?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why not months ago? Because I'm a coward. Because I was afraid. Because he stopped, started again. Because I didn't realize what I had until I almost lost it. Silence stretched between them. Then Eliza laughed. It was brittle and painful. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me, and it's still about loss. The words hit like a slap. I don't know how to do this, Adrian admitted. I don't know how to be what you need. I know. That's the problem. She wiped her eyes. You want to save me, Adrian, but you want to save me on your terms, with your control, and I can't live like that. Then tell me what you need. I need you to trust me, to believe that I can make my own choices, even if you disagree with them. She looked at him directly. I need you to stop trying to protect me and start trying to understand me. I'm trying. Are you? Or are you just trying to make yourself feel less guilty? Adrian had no answer to that. Eliza nodded like she'd expected it. I appreciate the concern, Your Grace, but I'll manage my own recovery and my own work. Eliza, please leave. He did, because what else could he do? The next 3 days were hell. Eliza continued working. Adrian continued trying to stop her. They fought in low, tense voices behind closed doors. Neither of them won. The estate staff watched nervously. Mrs. Calloway scolded them both. Dr. Whitmore made daily visits and grew increasingly grim. She's getting worse, Your Grace. Adrian didn't need to be told. He could see it in the way Eliza moved, slower, more careful, in the way she had to sit down between tasks, in the shadows under her eyes. Force her to rest. I've tried. She won't listen. Then try harder. The physician's voice was sharp. Because at this rate, you'll be planning a funeral by month's end. The words haunted Adrian. He started following Eliza. Not obviously, he wasn't that far gone, but close enough to catch her if she fell. She noticed, of course, started timing her movements to avoid him. It became a silent war. One he was losing. A week after the ball, everything came to a head. Adrian found Eliza in the conservatory digging in the frozen soil despite the bitter cold. Her hands were shaking. Her breath came in short gasps. What are you doing? Planting. She didn't look up. Spring bulbs. They need to go in before the ground freezes completely. It's already frozen. Not all the way down. Eliza, it's below freezing out here. I'll be fine. He watched her struggle with the trowel, watched her hands fumble, watched her entire body trembling with effort. That's it. He strode forward and pulled the trowel from her hands. You're done. Give that back. No. He threw it aside. You're coming inside, now. I haven't finished. I don't care. His control finally snapped. I don't care about the bulbs or the garden or any of it. I care about you not dying in a frozen conservatory because you're too stubborn to admit you need help. Eliza stood slowly, her face flushed with more than cold. You don't get to decide what I do. I'm your husband. You're a stranger who bought me. The words came out like bullets. You've never been a husband. Husbands care about their wives. Husbands notice when they're struggling. Husbands don't treat them like livestock. That's not fair. Fair? She laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? You married me for an heir. You got me pregnant and then ignored me. And now that I'm dying, you suddenly care? Where was this concern 3 months ago? I was afraid. We're all afraid, Eliza was shouting now, her voice echoing in the glass room. You think I'm not terrified? I'm 19 years old, pregnant, probably dying, married to a man who can't decide if he wants me alive. But I don't get to hide behind fear. I have to keep working, keep surviving, keep proving I'm worth the space I take up. You don't have to prove anything. Yes, I do. Because the moment I stop being useful, what am I to you? What purpose do I serve? Tears were streaming down her face. At least the work means something. At least the estate is better. But me? Just me, without all of this? I'm nothing to you. That's not true. Then what am I? The question hung in the frozen air. Adrian looked at this woman, trembling, furious, breaking apart in front of him, and knew he had one chance to get this right. You're everything, he said roughly. The estate, the heir, Blackridge, none of it matters if you die. None of it has ever mattered as much as you. Eliza stared at him. I don't know when it happened, Adrian continued. Maybe when I found you in here saving roses. Maybe when you reorganized my entire life without asking permission. Maybe it was always there, and I was too blind to see it. He stepped closer. But you're not nothing to me, Eliza. You're the only thing that isn't nothing. Her breath hitched. I'm sorry I made you think otherwise. I'm sorry I was too much of a coward to say it sooner. I'm sorry for all of it. His voice broke. But I'm saying it now. I care about you, not the work you do, not the air you're carrying. You. Silence. Then Eliza swayed. Adrian caught her before she fell, his heart stopping as her weight went limp in his arms. Eliza? Eliza! Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Terror unlike anything he'd ever known flooded through him. No, 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 no. He lifted her, cradling her against his chest. Mrs. Calloway, someone help! He ran. Through the conservatory, through the halls, up the stairs to her room. Her body was so light, too light, like she was already fading. Don't you dare, he said through gritted teeth. Don't you dare leave me now. Not after I finally... He laid her on the bed, checking her pulse with shaking hands. There. Faint but present. Mrs. Calloway burst in. What happened? She collapsed. Get Dr. Whitmore. Now. The housekeeper ran. Adrian sat beside Eliza, holding her hand, and felt his entire world balancing on a knife's edge. Come on, he whispered. Come back. Please. I need you to come back. Her eyes fluttered. Adrian? Relief crashed through him. I'm here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to Don't apologize. Don't you dare apologize. He pressed her hand to his face. Just stay with me, please. I'm so tired. I know. His voice was breaking. But you have to fight just a little longer. Why? Her voice was so quiet he almost missed it. What's the point? The point is, I love you. The words fell into the space between them like stones into water. Eliza's eyes widened. I love you, Adrian repeated, and it felt like tearing his chest open. I've probably loved you since you told me my filing system was catastrophic, and I'm terrified of it. But I need you to know before... Don't. She gripped his hand weakly. Don't say before anything. There's no before. Eliza, promise me. Tears were streaming down her face. Promise me you'll fight for me. Not for the estate. Not for duty. For me. I promise. Even if I lose the baby? The question was a knife, but Adrian didn't hesitate. Even then. Even if I can't give you an heir? Even if you can never give me anything? He leaned closer. I don't want an heir, Eliza. I want you. Just you. She started crying in earnest then. Dr. Whitmore arrived minutes later. His examination was quick and grim. When he finished, his face was grave. Her condition has worsened significantly. The collapse, the stress, her body is shutting down. Adrian felt the world tilt. What does that mean? It means she needs immediate intervention. Complete bed rest is no longer sufficient. The physician's voice was clinical. I recommend moving her to my practice in town. Constant supervision, proper medication, controlled environment. No. Eliza's voice was weak but firm. I'm not leaving Blackridge. Your Grace, your life is at risk. I don't care. This is my home. If I'm going to die, I'll die here. Eliza, Adrian started. No arguments. She looked at him. You promised to fight for me. This is what I need. Dr. Whitmore looked between them. Your Grace, I must advise against this in the strongest possible terms. Noted. Adrian's voice was steel. What do we need here? Equipment, medication, staff? The physician sighed. A dedicated nurse, specific tonics and medicines, monitoring equipment, and prayer. Everything but the last. How soon can you arrange it? 2 days? Maybe 3. Make it 1. Dr. Whitmore left, shaking his head. Adrian turned back to Eliza. She was watching him with something like wonder. You're really going to do this? Turn Blackridge into a sick ward? I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep you alive. He sat on the edge of the bed. Even if you hate me for it. I don't hate you. You should. Probably. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. But I don't. Why not? Because despite everything,
Despite the coldness and the contracts and the distance, I think you might actually be trying. She reached up, touching his face gently. And that has to count for something. Adrian caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. I'm going to save you. You can't save everyone, Adrian. Watch me. That night, he didn't leave her room. He sat in a chair beside her bed, watching her sleep, counting each breath like it might be the last. Mrs. Calloway brought him food. He didn't eat. The housekeeper sighed. Starving yourself won't help her, Your Grace. I know. Then eat. He looked at the tray, at the food Eliza hadn't been able to keep down for weeks, at evidence of his own failure. I should have seen it sooner, he said quietly. All the signs were there, the weight loss, the exhaustion. But I was so focused on my own fear that I didn't notice she was dying right in front of me. You're noticing now. It might be too late. It might. Mrs. Calloway didn't soften the truth. But feeling sorry for yourself won't change that. Action will. She left. Adrian looked at Eliza, pale and fragile in the lamplight, and made a decision. He'd spent 3 years fighting to save Blackridge. 3 years of sacrifice and calculation and ruthless pragmatism. Now he was going to fight for something that actually mattered, even if it killed him. Doctor. Whitmore returned the next morning with a nurse, supplies, and equipment that transformed Eliza's room into something resembling a hospital ward. Adrian watched them work, feeling useless and desperate. The next 72 hours are critical, the physician said. If we can stabilize her, keep her nourished, manage the pregnancy stress, there's a chance. What kind of chance? Honestly, 50-50. Maybe less. Dr. Whitmore's voice was grim. She's very weak, Your Grace, and the pregnancy is draining what little reserves she has left. Adrian looked at Eliza, sleeping under the effects of laudanum. Then we make sure she survives the next 72 hours. With respect, Your Grace, that's not entirely up to us. Then what is? The physician packed his bag. Her will to live. Right now, I'm not certain she has it. The words haunted Adrian. He'd seen it in her eyes. That exhaustion, that resignation, the way she'd asked what the point was. She'd been fighting for months, fighting to matter, to be useful, to earn his love. And she was tired. He needed to give her a reason to keep fighting, but how? The answer came that night. Eliza woke around midnight, disoriented and weak. Adrian was there immediately. I'm here. What happened? You've been unconscious most of the day. Dr. Whitmore has you on medication. I feel strange. That's the laudanum. She looked around the room, at the equipment, the supplies, the transformation. You did all this for me? I told you, I'm fighting for you. Why? The question was simple and devastating. Adrian took her hand. Because I love you, and I finally understand what that means. What does it mean? It means your survival matters more than mine. It means I would burn Blackridge to the ground if it kept you alive. It means... His voice broke. It means I can't imagine a future without you in it. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's true. How do I know? Fair question. He'd given her no reason to trust him. Adrian stood and walked to the window. Outside, Blackridge sprawled in darkness, his legacy, his responsibility, his prison. I've spent 3 years trying to save this place, he said quietly. 3 years of sacrifice and calculation. I told myself it was about duty, about honor, about continuing the family line. He turned to face her. But the truth is, Blackridge was all I had left after Catherine. It couldn't leave me, couldn't disappoint me. So I poured everything into it and convinced myself that was enough. And now? Now I realize I was just hiding, using duty as an excuse not to feel anything. He moved back to her bedside. But you changed that. You came into my life and made it impossible not to care. About the estate, yes. But more importantly, about you. Eliza watched him silently. I don't know how to prove this to you, Adrian continued. I don't know what words will make you believe me, but I'm asking you to try. To fight. To survive. Not for the baby, not for Blackridge. For yourself. What if I'm too tired? Then let me be strong enough for both of us.
Just this once. She studied his face for a long moment. Then she squeezed his hand weakly. Okay. Okay? I'll try. Her voice was barely a whisper. But Adrian, if I don't make it, you will. But if I don't, she continued firmly, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't close yourself off again. Don't let this make you cold. Her eyes were fierce despite her weakness. Promise me you'll keep trying, keep feeling, even if it hurts. Eliza, promise me. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the terror of what she was asking him to imagine. I promise, he managed, but you're going to make it. I won't accept anything else. A small smile crossed her face. So stubborn. You're one to talk. She laughed weakly, then her expression turned serious. Adrian, thank you. For what? For finally seeing me. The words broke something in him. He leaned down and kissed her forehead gently. I'm sorry it took so long. So am I. She fell asleep holding his hand. Adrian sat there in the darkness, watching her breathe, and made a silent vow. She would survive this. He would make sure of it, even if he had to fight heaven and hell to do it. The next 48 hours blurred together. Eliza drifted in and out of consciousness. The nurse administered medications, changed bedding, monitored vital signs. Dr. Whitmore visited twice daily, his expression growing grimmer each time. Adrian never left her side. He slept in the chair when exhaustion forced him, ate when Mrs. Calloway threatened to pour soup down his throat. But otherwise, he stayed, watching, waiting, praying to deities he didn't believe in. On the third night, Eliza's condition worsened. Fever set in. She became delirious, calling out for her mother, for people Adrian didn't recognize. The nurse looked increasingly worried. Should I fetch Dr. Whitmore? She asked. Yes, now. The woman ran. Adrian moved to the bed, pressing a cool cloth to Eliza's forehead. She was burning up. Eliza, can you hear me? Too hot, she mumbled. Can't breathe. The physician is coming. Just hold on. Adrian? I'm here. Her eyes opened, unfocused. Am I dying? No, you're going to be fine. You're lying. She wasn't wrong. Dr. Whitmore arrived within the hour. His examination was swift and terrifying. The fever is affecting the pregnancy. Her body is trying to reject it. Adrian felt the floor drop out from under him. What does that mean? It means we may need to choose. The physician's voice was grave. Between her and the child. The world stopped. What are you saying? I'm saying that if the fever continues, it will kill them both. But if we intervene, if we end the pregnancy, we might save her. Adrian couldn't process it. End the pregnancy. Yes, Your Grace. You mean kill our child. I mean save your wife. The choice was impossible. Keep fighting for both and lose everything, or sacrifice one to save the other. Adrian looked at Eliza, unconscious and burning with fever. Thought about her reading mortality statistics by lamplight, about her asking what happened if she couldn't give him an heir, about his promise to choose her, even if she lost the baby. Do it, he said. Dr. Whitmore hesitated. Your Grace, I said do it, save her, whatever it takes. This is not a decision to make lightly. I'm not making it lightly. Adrian's voice was raw. I'm making it because I promised her I would fight for her, not for the heir, for her. So do whatever you need to do to keep my wife alive. The physician nodded slowly. I'll need to speak with her. This must be her choice. She's delirious. Then we wait until she's lucid. This is not my decision to make, Your Grace, or yours. He was right. Adrian knew it. But waiting felt like dying. They gave Eliza medication to bring down the fever, ice baths, everything they could think of. Finally, near dawn, her eyes cleared. Adrian? He was there immediately. I'm here. What happened? You had a fever. It's affecting the pregnancy. He took her hand. Dr. Whitmore is here. He needs to talk to you. The physician stepped forward. Your Grace, I'll be direct. The fever is putting both you and the child at severe risk. If it continues, you'll both die. But if we intervene, if we end the pregnancy, we can likely save you. Eliza stared at him. You want me to abort my baby. I want you to survive. What about the child? At 3 months, the fetus is not viable outside the womb. So it dies. Yes, Your Grace. Silence fell. Eliza looked at Adrian. What do you think? The question was a knife. I think... He swallowed hard. I think I want you to live. Even if it means no heir? Even then, we can try again later when you're stronger, or we can adopt, or we can... His voice broke. Or we can live without children. I don't care, Eliza. I just need you to survive this. Tears streamed down her face. I wanted to give you this. It was the one thing I could do right. You've done everything right. You saved Blackridge. You saved me. He gripped her hand. But now I'm asking you to save yourself. What if I can't? What if I'm too weak? Then we fight together. She closed her eyes, took a shuddering breath. Okay, she whispered. Do it. Dr. Whitmore nodded. I'll need to prepare. This will take several hours. He left to gather supplies. Adrian sat beside Eliza, holding her hand as she cried silently. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For failing you. You haven't failed me. You could never fail me. I couldn't even keep our baby alive. This isn't your fault. He leaned closer. None of this is your fault, Eliza. If anyone's to blame, it's me. I did this to you. No, I pushed you too hard, ignored the signs, made you think you had to work yourself to death to matter. His voice was rough. But I'm done making you prove yourself. You matter because you exist. Period. Nothing else required. She looked at him through tears. I love you. The words hit him like a physical blow. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's true. She smiled weakly. And because I might not get another chance. Don't talk like that. Adrian, her voice was firm despite its weakness. I need you to listen. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen. If something happens, she continued, I need you to keep living, keep fighting. Don't let this break you. Eliza, promise me. He couldn't. The words wouldn't come. Because if she died, he didn't know if he could keep that promise. Dr. Whitmore returned with the nurse and equipment. We're ready, Your Grace. Adrian looked at Eliza. She nodded weakly. I'll be right here, he said, the entire time. I know. The procedure began. Adrian held Eliza's hand through all of it, whispering words he didn't remember, making promises he might not be able to keep. And somewhere in the brutal hours that followed, as dawn broke over Blackridge and turned the sky the color of blood, he realized something. He'd spent 3 years building walls to protect himself from pain, but pain had found him anyway. The only question now was whether he was strong enough to survive it. The procedure took 3 hours. Adrian counted every minute. He stayed beside Eliza the entire time, holding her hand while Dr. Whitmore worked with grim efficiency. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes squeezing his fingers so hard he thought they might break, sometimes going limp and terrifyingly still. When it was finally over, the physician looked exhausted. It's done. Adrian's voice came out hoarse. Will she survive? The next 24 hours will tell us. Dr. Whitmore stripped off his bloodied gloves. But she's young, strong. If infection doesn't set in, she has a chance. What kind of chance? Better than before. That's all I can promise. It wasn't enough, but it would have to be. The nurse cleaned Eliza while Adrian retreated to the corner, his legs suddenly unable to hold him. He slid down the wall and sat there, staring at nothing, trying to process what had just happened. They'd killed their child to save Eliza. He'd made that choice, had looked Dr. Whitmore in the eye and said, do it without hesitation. And he'd do it again. The realization should have felt like guilt. Instead, it felt like clarity. For 3 years, he'd told himself duty mattered most. Legacy, the bloodline, continuing the Voss name at any cost. But when faced with the actual cost, Eliza's life, none of it had mattered. She mattered. Everything else was just noise. Your Grace? The nurse's voice pulled him back. You should rest. I'll watch over her. No. You've been awake for nearly 3 days. I'm not leaving her. The nurse looked like she wanted to argue. Then she saw his face and thought better of it. Adrian hauled himself to his feet and returned to Eliza's bedside. She was pale as death, her breathing shallow but steady. The nurse had changed her into a clean nightgown, washed away the blood. But Adrian could still smell it, could still see it on the sheets Dr. Whitmore had bundled away, evidence of the child they'd never meet. He sat in the chair that had become his home and took Eliza's hand. "I'm here," he said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere." She didn't respond. Adrian settled in to wait. The first 12 hours were the worst. Eliza's fever spiked twice. Dr. Whitmore returned both times, administering medicine, checking vitals, looking increasingly worried. "If the fever doesn't break by morning, it will," Adrian said flatly. It had to. Mrs. Calloway brought food that he didn't eat and blankets he didn't use. She didn't lecture him this time, just squeezed his shoulder and left. Night fell. Then dawn came. Then another night. Adrian lost track of time. Everything narrowed to Eliza's breathing, her pulse, the tiny signs that she was still fighting. On the second morning after the procedure, her eyes opened. "Adrian?" He was on his feet instantly. "I'm here." "What happened?" "You've been unconscious for 2 days. The fever broke 6 hours ago." His voice was rough from disuse. "How do you feel?" "Empty." She touched her stomach, her face crumpling. "The baby is gone. I'm sorry." Tears streamed down her face. Adrian wanted to say something comforting, something that would make this better. But there were no words for this kind of loss, so he just held her hand and let her cry. "I failed," she said eventually. "No, I couldn't even keep our child alive for 4 months." Her voice broke. "What kind of woman can't—" "The kind who's been starving herself trying to prove she's worth keeping." Adrian's voice was firm. "This wasn't failure, Eliza. This was survival. And I'm grateful for it." "How can you say that?" "Because I'd rather have you alive than 100 heirs." He leaned closer. "I mean that, with everything I am." She searched his face like she was looking for lies, found only truth. "The county will talk," she said quietly. "They'll say I'm barren, cursed, that you should set me aside and find someone who can actually—" "Let them talk." Adrian's voice was steel. "I don't care what they think, and I'm done pretending I do." "Adrian, no." He squeezed her hand. "For 3 years, I've let fear and duty dictate every decision. I've hidden behind contracts and cold pragmatism because it felt safer than actually caring about anything. But I'm done with that. I'm choosing you, publicly, permanently. Let the entire county go to hell." Eliza stared at him. "You're serious. Completely. What about the estate, the bloodline? We'll figure it out. Later. When you're stronger." He touched her face gently. "Right now, the only thing that matters is your recovery." "What if I can't have children again?" "Then we won't have children. But the estate needs us to run it. That's all." Adrian's voice softened. "I spent 3 years fighting to save Blackridge. But what's the point if I'm alone in it? What legacy am I building if there's no one to share it with?" Tears welled in her eyes again. "When did you become a romantic?" "When I almost lost you." She laughed weakly. It was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. Over the next week, Eliza slowly improved. The fever stayed away. Her color returned. She managed to keep down food. Not much, but enough to stop Dr. Whitmore from looking quite so grim. Adrian stayed with her constantly. He read to her when she was awake, worked on estate business in her room when she slept, told her stories about his childhood that he'd never shared with anyone. Slowly, carefully, they learned how to actually talk to each other. "Tell me about Catherine," Eliza said one afternoon. Adrian looked up from the ledger he'd been reviewing. "Why?" "Because she's the reason you built all those walls. I want to understand." He set the ledger aside. "There's not much to tell. We were engaged. My father died. She left. It must have hurt. It did, for a while." Adrian studied his hands. But looking back, I think what hurt most was the humiliation. I'd believed her promises, believed we had something real, and then she proved it was all conditional. On money. On stability. Security. Things I couldn't provide anymore. He met Eliza's eyes. I told myself I'd never make that mistake again. Never trust someone's love when survival was at stake. And then you married me. And then I married you, he agreed, with a contract designed to prevent exactly that kind of vulnerability. How did that work out? He laughed despite himself. Terribly. You destroyed every wall I built without even trying. I wasn't trying to destroy anything. I was just trying to survive. I know. That's what made it so effective. Adrian moved to sit on the edge of her bed. You came into my life expecting nothing and gave me everything. And I was too much of a coward to see it. Eliza took his hand. You're seeing it now. I am, finally. Better late than never. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Eliza's expression turned serious. Adrian, what happens now? What do you mean? With us. With the estate. With everything. She gestured vaguely. We lost the baby. The county thinks I'm either cursed or a fraud. Your creditors are still circling. Where do we go from here? Good question. Adrian had spent the last week so focused on keeping Eliza alive that he hadn't thought past it. But she was right. They needed a plan. We start by getting you completely recovered, he said. No arguments. You rest, you eat, you heal. Everything else can wait. And then? Then we rebuild, differently this time. How differently? I don't know yet. He squeezed her hand. But I know I'm not doing it alone anymore. We're partners now, real partners. That means we make decisions together. Eliza looked skeptical. You're going to let me help run the estate? Let you? You've been running half of it for months. I'd be an idiot not to make it official. The county won't like that. The county can adjust. Adrian's voice was firm. You saved Blackridge once. You'll help me save it again. And this time, I'm going to actually appreciate it instead of taking it for granted. Bold words. I'm feeling bold. She smiled. It was small and fragile, but genuine. Okay, she said. Partners. Partners. 2 weeks after the procedure, Dr. Whitmore declared Eliza well enough to leave her room. Short walks only, he cautioned. No exertion, no stress, and absolutely no work. Eliza looked mutinous. Adrian squeezed her hand in warning. She'll follow your orders exactly, he said. Will I? Yes, because if you don't, I'll carry you back to bed myself. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Dr. Whitmore watched their banter with something like amusement. I see you two have figured some things out. We're working on it, Adrian said. After the physician left, Eliza turned to Adrian. I want to go to the conservatory. That's too far. It's down 2 flights of stairs and across the hall. I can manage. Eliza, please. Her voice was quiet but firm. I need to see it, to see if the roses survived. He couldn't argue with that, so he helped her down the stairs slowly, with frequent stops, and into the conservatory. The space was warmer than he remembered. Someone had been maintaining the heat. Eliza moved to the rose bushes she'd been working on before everything fell apart. Adrian watched her examine them carefully, touching leaves, checking stems. They're alive, she said finally. Not thriving, but alive. Like us. She looked back at him and smiled. Yes, like us. They stood there together in the weak winter sun, and Adrian felt something shift. This was what healing looked like. Not dramatic, not perfect. Just small moments of not dying that slowly accumulated into living. Thank you, Eliza said quietly. For what? For fighting for me. For choosing me over the heir. She touched his face gently. For finally seeing me. I should have seen you from the beginning. You see me now. That's what matters. Adrian pulled her close, careful of her still fragile body, and held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. The county gossip reached a fever pitch. Word of Eliza's illness spread like wildfire. Everyone had theories, miscarriage, fraud, divine punishment for marrying above her station. Adrian heard it all. From tenants who thought he couldn't hear them whispering. From neighboring landowners who made veiled comments during business meetings. From his own staff, though they at least had the decency to look ashamed when he caught them. He ignored most of it, But when Lord Ashford made a pointed comment about the importance of securing the bloodline with proven stock, Adrian snapped. Say that again? Ashford blinked. I merely meant, you meant my wife is unsuitable because she lost a child. Adrian's voice was ice. A child that died because I pushed her too hard, because I treated her like livestock instead of a person. So if you want to judge someone's stock, Lord Ashford, I suggest you start with mine. The room went silent. Your Grace, I didn't mean to offend. Yes, you did. You've been making comments like that since I married her. Adrian stood. But here's what you don't understand. My wife saved Blackridge. She negotiated deals with creditors who wouldn't give me the time of day. She organized systems that actually work. She did more in 4 months than I managed in 3 years. But I'm not finished. His voice cut like a blade. So while you and the rest of the county sit around gossiping about whether she's worthy of the title, I'm going to go home to the woman who actually earned it. And if I hear one more word questioning her value, you'll find your lease agreements under very careful review. He walked out. The story spread faster than the original gossip. By the time Adrian returned to Blackridge, half the county knew he'd publicly defended his wife. The other half knew by dinner. Eliza heard about it from Mrs. Calloway. You did what? She asked when Adrian found her in the library. Told Ashford to mind his own business. Adrian, I'm done pretending, Eliza. Done letting people disrespect you while I stand there silently. He sat beside her. You deserve better than that. You're going to make enemies. I already have enemies. At least now they're enemies for the right reasons. She studied him for a long moment. Then she laughed, really laughed, bright and surprised. What? He asked. You've changed. Is that bad? No, it's just different. She touched his hand. The man I married would never have confronted Lord Ashford. He would have calculated the social cost and stayed silent. The man you married was a coward. He was scared. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Eliza's voice was soft but certain. Fear is natural. Cowardice is a choice. And you're not choosing it anymore. Adrian felt something warm unfold in his chest. Neither are you. What do you mean? You married a stranger who treated you terribly. You could have demanded to leave, could have made my life miserable, could have done nothing and let the estate collapse. He squeezed her hand. But you chose to fight, to build, to save something that wasn't even yours yet. It became mine the moment I said, I do. Did it? Of course. Blackridge is my home now. These people are my responsibility too. She looked around the library, the space she'd cataloged, organized, saved. I wasn't going to let it die just because my husband was too stubborn to accept help. Adrian laughed. I was incredibly stubborn. You still are. Fair point. They sat together in comfortable silence, hands entwined, and Adrian realized something. This was what partnership felt like. Not perfect agreement, not constant harmony, just two people choosing each other, day after day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. The turning point came 3 weeks later. Lord Ashford arrived at Blackridge unannounced. Adrian received him in the study, his patience already thin. What do you want? Ashford shifted uncomfortably. I came to apologize, Your Grace. Adrian blinked. Excuse me? For my comments about the Duchess. They were inappropriate. The older man looked genuinely chagrined. I've been thinking about what you said, about how much she's done for Blackridge, and you were right. I know I was right. What changed your mind? My wife. Ashford smiled ruefully. Lady Ashford pointed out, quite forcefully, that the Duchess accomplished more in 4 months than most people manage in years, and that perhaps I should be less concerned with bloodlines and more impressed by actual competence. Your wife is a wise woman. She is. And she also pointed out that the Duchess was kind to her during the ball, even when we were all being... He trailed off. Insufferable? I was going to say judgmental, but yes. Adrian studied the man across from him. Ashford looked sincere. And more importantly, he'd swallowed his pride enough to actually apologize. Apology accepted, Adrian said finally. But if I hear you making comments about my wife again, you won't. You have my word. After Ashford left, Adrian went to find Eliza. She was in the morning room, reviewing correspondence with a tea tray beside her. She'd gained weight over the last few weeks. Not much, but enough that she no longer looked like she might blow away. Ashford just apologized to me, he said without preamble. Eliza looked up. For what? For being an ass about you. Apparently his wife set him straight. Lady Ashford did? Eliza sounded genuinely surprised. You were kind to her at the ball. I was polite to everyone at the ball. It seemed safer than telling them what I actually thought. Adrian laughed. What did you actually think? That they were all vultures circling a dying estate, hoping to pick off pieces when it collapsed. She set down her letter. But I couldn't say that, so I smiled and made small talk and pretended I didn't notice them judging me. You're better than me. I wanted to throw half of them out a window. The feeling was mutual. They grinned at each other. Then Eliza's expression turned serious. Adrian, are people really changing their minds about me? Some of them. Why? Because I finally stopped pretending you weren't remarkable. He sat beside her. And because you are remarkable. Even the people who wanted to hate you can't deny what you've done for Blackridge. I didn't do it for their approval. I know. You did it because the estate needed help and you were capable of giving it. He took her hand. But you deserve their approval anyway, and their respect, and I'm going to make sure they give it to you. Eliza squeezed his fingers. My fierce defender. Always. The next month brought more changes. Adrian hired a steward, a competent man named Patterson, who could handle day-to-day operations, but he made it clear that Eliza was the estate's co-administrator. Her decisions carried the same weight as his. The staff adjusted quickly. They'd already been following Eliza's systems anyway. Making it official just formalized what everyone already knew. The tenants took longer. Some of them balked at taking orders from a woman. Adrian dealt with those personally, making it very clear that disrespecting the Duchess meant disrespecting him. Most adjusted. A few left. Adrian let them go without argument. We don't need people who can't respect basic competence, he told Eliza. You're losing workers. I'm losing dead weight. There's a difference. Slowly, grudgingly, the estate continued to heal. Crops were planned for spring. Repairs were scheduled. The worst debts were renegotiated into manageable payment plans, many of them using terms Eliza had already drafted. Blackridge was still struggling, still one bad winter away from disaster, but it was no longer dying, and neither was Adrian. He started sleeping in Eliza's room. Not for sex. Dr. Whitmore had forbidden that until she was fully recovered. Just sleeping beside her. Close enough to hear her breathe. The first night she'd looked surprised when he appeared with a pillow. What are you doing? Sleeping here, if that's acceptable. Why? Because I've spent too many nights alone. He set his pillow on the other side of her bed. And because I'd rather be with you. She'd smiled, moved over to make room. They lay in the darkness together, not touching, just existing in the same space. Adrian? Eliza's voice was quiet. Yes? Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for surviving. She took his hand. They fell asleep like that, fingers entwined, finally together. In the morning, Mrs. Calloway found them and smiled to herself. About time, she thought. Spring came early that year. The conservatory exploded with life as Eliza's roses finally bloomed. She spent hours there, nursing the plants back to full health. Adrian would find her sometimes, dirt under her nails, talking to the flowers like they were children. They can't hear you, he said once. How do you know? Because they're plants. Plants respond to care, to attention. She touched a bloom gently. Maybe they can't hear words, but they know when someone believes in them. Adrian thought about that later, about how he'd spent years believing nothing mattered except survival, how he'd treated people, including himself, like resources to be managed rather than lives to be lived, how Eliza had survived him anyway and somehow made him better in the process. One afternoon, he found her in the estate office. She wasn't supposed to be working, Dr. Whitmore's orders, but she'd apparently decided correspondence didn't count. What are you doing? She held up a letter. Planning a dinner party. Adrian blinked. We don't host dinner parties. We do now. I'm inviting the Ashfords, the Thorntons, the Merricks, and about 12 other families who've been gossiping about us. Why would we invite people who've been spreading rumors? Because I'm tired of hiding. Eliza's voice was firm. I'm the Duchess of Blackridge. It's time I actually acted like it. Eliza, no arguments? You wanted me to be your partner? Partners don't hide in their estate waiting for approval. They claim their place and make others adjust. She set down her pen. Besides, it'll be fun watching them try to be polite after months of gossip. Adrian started laughing. What? She asked. Nothing, just you've changed too. Have I? The woman I married would never have suggested throwing a dinner party to spite the county. The woman you married was terrified of everything. Eliza smiled. But I'm not that woman anymore. No, you're better. We're both better. She was right. They were both scarred, both still healing, both still figuring out how to be married to each other instead of just surviving in proximity. But they were trying, and for the first time since his father died, Adrian actually believed they might succeed. The dinner party happened 2 weeks later. Eliza had worked herself into a state of nervous energy despite Adrian's attempts to calm her. What if no one comes? Then we'll have a lovely dinner alone. What if they all come and it's a disaster? Then we'll survive it, together. She'd looked at him like he'd said something profound. Together, she repeated. I like that. In the end, everyone came. Curiosity, probably. The chance to see the infamous Duchess and judge whether the gossip was true. Adrian didn't care about their motivations. He just wanted them to see Eliza as she actually was. She wore a new dress, the first thing she'd bought for herself since arriving at Blackridge. Deep green, elegant, perfectly fitted. She looked like a duchess. More importantly, she looked like herself. The guests arrived in a flurry of carriages and false smiles. Adrian watched them take in the transformed manor, the restored library, the warming conservatory, the evidence of competent management everywhere. Lady Ashford approached Eliza first. Duchess Voss, thank you for inviting us. Lady Ashford, I'm so glad you could come. Eliza's voice was warm but controlled. I wanted to thank you for your kindness at your ball. My kindness? The older woman looked confused. You asked after my health when no one else did. It meant more than you know. Lady Ashford's expression softened. You were clearly unwell. I'm glad to see you recovered. So am I. The evening progressed in fits and starts. Some guests remained distant, clearly uncomfortable. Others warmed gradually, drawn in by Eliza's genuine interest in their lives and her surprising knowledge of the county's affairs. By dessert, the atmosphere had shifted. Adrian watched it happen, watched his wife win over a room full of skeptics through nothing more than being herself. Smart, competent, kind. Everything he'd been too blind to see for months. Lord Thornton approached him during the final course. Your Duchess is quite impressive, Voss. I'm aware. We all wondered, forgive me for being blunt, whether the marriage was strategic, whether you'd chosen poorly. And now? Thornton smiled. Now I'm wondering if you deserved her. Adrian laughed. I don't, but I'm trying to earn her anyway. Good man. After the guests left, Eliza collapsed onto the settee. That was exhausting. You were brilliant. Was I? She looked genuinely uncertain. I felt like I was performing the entire time. You were being yourself. That's not performance. Adrian sat beside her. And they loved you for it. Some of them, maybe. Most of them. Even the ones who didn't want to. He took her hand. You proved them all wrong, Eliza. Every person who said you weren't suitable. Every rumor about you being beneath this title. You showed them exactly who you are. And who am I? The woman who saved Blackridge, my partner, my wife. He paused. The person I love. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you, Eliza Voss. I love your stubbornness and your brilliance and the way you talk to roses. I love that you cataloged my library without asking and told me my filing system was catastrophic. I love... She kissed him. It was different from their wedding kiss, from the mechanical encounters in his bedroom. This was real, messy, full of months of pain and hope and stubborn survival. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. I love you too, Eliza whispered.
even though you're impossible. Especially because I'm impossible. That too.
They sat together in the empty dining room, surrounded by evidence of their success, and Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate kind born from necessity, the real kind, the kind that believed tomorrow might actually be better than today. "We're going to make it," he said quietly. "The estate? Everything. All of it." He pulled her closer. "We're going to build something remarkable here. Together." Bold words. "I'm a bold man now. Hadn't you heard?" Eliza laughed against his chest, and in that moment, Adrian knew, with absolute certainty, that they'd already won the fight that mattered most. They'd survived each other. Everything else was just details. Summer arrived with a vengeance. Black Ridge transformed under the heat, fields turning gold, the conservatory bursting with blooms, the manor itself seeming to exhale after years of holding its breath. Eliza was in the garden when the letter arrived. Adrian found her there, kneeling in the dirt despite the temperature, transplanting seedlings with the focused intensity she brought to everything. "You're going to get heat stroke," he said. She looked up, squinting against the sun. "I'm almost done." "You said that an hour ago. This time I mean it." She wiped sweat from her forehead, leaving a streak of dirt. "What's that?" He held up the envelope. "Letter from your family." Her expression shuddered immediately. "Ah, you haven't opened it." "Neither have you. It's addressed to you." Eliza stood slowly, brushing dirt from her dress. "Then I suppose I should read it." She took the letter with obvious reluctance. Adrian had noticed she never talked about her family. In 6 months of marriage, they'd never visited, never written. It was like she'd been erased from their lives the moment she became his wife. Or maybe she'd erased them first. Eliza opened the envelope, scanned the contents, and her face went carefully blank. "What is it?" Adrian asked. "My father wants money." "For what?" "Does it matter?" She refolded the letter precisely. "They're in debt again. Apparently marrying me off didn't solve all their problems." The bitterness in her voice was new. "How much does he want?" £500. Adrian whistled. "That's not insignificant." "No, it's not." Eliza looked at the letter like it was a snake. "He also wants to know if I'm with child yet. Says the family is counting on me to secure the line and improve their standing. Charming man, your father. He sold me to you for £200 and a promise of future favors. Charming isn't in his vocabulary." She crumpled the letter. "I'm not giving him money." "I didn't ask you to." "Good. Because I won't." Her voice was sharp. "He had 4 daughters. I was just the eldest, the one he could move first, and now that I'm gone, he's realized he actually has to manage his own affairs." Adrian studied her face. "You're angry." "Of course I'm angry. I've been angry for 6 months. I was just too busy surviving to acknowledge it." "Do you want to write back?" "And say what? That I almost died because my husband treated me like livestock just like you did? That I lost a child and nearly my life trying to prove I was worth the bargain price?" She laughed without humor. "He wouldn't care, Adrian. He'd just ask when I'm planning to try again." The truth of it sat heavy between them. "Then don't write back," Adrian said simply. Eliza looked surprised. "Just ignore him?" "Why not? He ignored you for 19 years except when you were useful. Seems fair." She stared at him. Then, slowly, she smiled. "You're right. He doesn't deserve a response." She threw the crumpled letter into the garden refuse pile. "Let him wonder." "Savage. I learned from the best." They grinned at each other. Then Eliza swayed slightly. Adrian caught her immediately. "I'm fine. You're overheated. Inside. Now." "Adrian, no arguments. Dr. Whitmore said to be careful." He steered her toward the house. "And I'm not risking your health because you're stubborn about seedlings. The seedlings will survive one afternoon without you. You won't survive heat stroke." She grumbled, but let him lead her inside. Mrs. Calloway met them in the hall, took one look at Eliza's flushed face, and immediately sent for cold water and cloths. "How long was she out there?" the housekeeper demanded. "Too long," Adrian said. I was fine. You were about to collapse. Again." Mrs. Calloway's voice was stern. "Your Grace, you've made remarkable progress. Don't undo it by being foolish." Eliza had the grace to look chastened. They got her settled in the morning room with cool water and open windows. Adrian sat beside her, watching the color slowly return to normal in her face. "I hate being treated like glass," she said quietly. "You're not glass, you're just human, and humans have limits. I used to work 18-hour days. You used to be dying. There's a difference." She sighed. "I know, I hate feeling weak." "You're not weak. You survived something that would have killed most people." Adrian took her hand. "But surviving doesn't mean you're invincible. It just means you're still here." "Barely. Barely is enough." Eliza leaned her head against his shoulder. "When did you become wise?" "When I stopped being an idiot." "You're still an idiot sometimes." "Fair point." They sat in comfortable silence until Eliza's breathing evened out and she fell asleep against him. Adrian stayed very still, not wanting to wake her, and thought about the letter from her father. £500. It was a fortune to people like the Rowans. Not insignificant even to Blackridge's recovering finances. But it wasn't the money that bothered him. It was the casual assumption that Eliza existed to serve her family's interests, that her worth was measured in what she could provide: heirs, money, status. The same way he'd measured her worth for months. The realization made him feel sick. He'd been no better than her father. Worse, maybe, because at least her father had never pretended to be anything other than mercenary. Adrian had hidden behind contracts and duty and told himself it was different. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, Eliza received another letter, this time from her mother. She read it at breakfast, her expression growing increasingly tight. "What is it?" Adrian asked. "My mother wants to visit. And that's bad because she wants to assess my situation and provide guidance on fulfilling my duties." Eliza set down the letter. "She's heard rumors that I lost a child. She wants to make sure I'm trying again properly." Adrian felt rage building. "She wants to what?" "You heard me." Eliza's voice was flat. "Apparently there are whispers that I'm barren, that you might set me aside. She wants to ensure I'm doing everything possible to prevent that." That's exactly what I expected from her. Eliza picked up her tea with shaking hands. "My mother has always been very clear about a woman's purpose. Produce heirs. Maintain status. Don't cause trouble." "What do you want to do?" She looked surprised. "You're asking me? It's your mother, your decision." Eliza studied him for a long moment. "I want to tell her no." "Then tell her no." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Adrian leaned back. "You're the Duchess of Blackridge. You don't have to justify yourself to anyone, not even your mother." The old Adrian would have insisted I maintain family connections, for appearances. The old Adrian was an idiot. We've established this. She laughed despite herself. "You really don't care if I refuse her?" "I care that you're comfortable in your own home. If having your mother here makes you uncomfortable, then she doesn't come." End of discussion. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. "What?" Adrian asked, alarmed. "Nothing, just thank you for letting me choose. You shouldn't have to thank me for basic respect." "Maybe not, but I will anyway." She wrote back that afternoon, politely declining her mother's visit. Adrian read over her shoulder as she sealed the letter. "That's very diplomatic." "I'm a duchess now. Diplomacy is required." She handed the letter to a servant for posting. "Even when I want to tell her to go to hell." "You're learning. I have a good teacher." "I thought I was an idiot?" "You can be both." Adrian laughed and pulled her close. They were learning how to do this, how to be married, how to be partners. It wasn't perfect. They still fought, still struggled, still had days where the past weighed too heavy. But they were trying, and that made all the difference. Summer faded into autumn. The estate's first proper harvest in 3 years came in strong. Not spectacular, but solid. Enough to pay debts, stock supplies for winter, and even put a little aside for emergencies. Adrian and Eliza stood at the edge of the fields, watching workers bring in the last of the grain. "We did this," Eliza said quietly. "You did this. I just stopped sabotaging your efforts." "We did this," she repeated firmly. "Together." She was right. Adrian had provided the authority and resources, but Eliza had provided the vision, the organization, the relentless work that transformed theory into reality. Together, they'd saved Blackridge. What happens now? Eliza asked. What do you mean? We've stabilized the estate, paid down the worst debts, even started rebuilding relationships with the county. She turned to face him. What's next? Adrian considered the question. A year ago, the answer would have been simple. Survive the next winter, produce an heir, maintain status. But now? I don't know, he admitted. What do you want? I want... Eliza paused, thinking. I want to keep building, not just maintaining, actually growing. I want to expand the tenant gardens, improve the cottages, maybe start a school for the children. A school? Half the tenants can't read. Their children have no prospects beyond farming. A school could change that. Her voice grew animated. We have the library. We could hire a teacher. It wouldn't cost much. Do it. She stopped mid-sentence. What? Do it. Start the school. Improve the cottages. Whatever you think will help. Adrian smiled. You've earned the right to shape this place. Make it yours. Make it ours, she corrected. Make it ours, he agreed. They stood together watching the harvest, planning futures they'd never dared imagine, and Adrian felt something close to peace. The trouble came in October. A letter arrived from Adrian's solicitor. One of the major creditors, a merchant bank in London, was calling in their debt. The full amount. Immediately. £3,000. Adrian read the letter twice, his stomach sinking. We don't have £3,000, he said. Eliza looked up from her correspondence. What? He handed her the letter. She read it, her face paling. This is the Ashford debt, isn't it? The one I renegotiated? Yes. They agreed to a payment plan, 5 years. I have it in writing. The bank changed ownership. New management. They're not honoring previous arrangements. Adrian slumped in his chair. We have 60 days to pay or they'll seize assets. What assets? Parts of the estate. Tenant farms, possibly the manor itself. Eliza stared at him. They can't do that. They can. The original loan used the estate as collateral. But we've been making payments, which the new owners don't care about. Adrian felt old rage rising. They see a struggling estate and smell blood in the water. Eliza stood abruptly and started pacing. We'll sell something. The library collection, those first editions are valuable. Not valuable enough. We'd get maybe £500. The conservatory equipment, maybe another 100. Then we'll... She stopped, helpless. I don't know. Adrian didn't either. They'd spent months clawing their way back from the edge, had finally started to believe they might survive. And now this. There has to be a solution, Eliza said. If there is, I don't see it. Then we'll find one. Her voice was fierce. We didn't survive the last 6 months just to lose everything now. Eliza, no. She stopped pacing and looked at him directly. I refuse to accept this. There's always a solution. We just have to think. Adrian wanted to believe her, but the numbers were brutal. £3,000 in 60 days. It was impossible. They spent the next week trying anyway. Eliza went through every ledger, every asset, every possible source of income. Adrian contacted every business associate he still had, looking for loans or extensions. Nothing worked. The amounts were too small, the timeline too short, and their reputation, though improved, was still shaky enough that no one wanted to risk major capital. By the second week, Adrian was ready to admit defeat. Eliza wasn't. There's one option we haven't considered, she said. What? My dowry. Adrian looked up sharply. What about it? It was £200, right? Plus future considerations for my family. She met his eyes. I could ask my father to cover the difference, as an investment in Blackridge's future. Absolutely not. Adrian, I won't let you beg your father for money after he's sold you like livestock. I'm not begging, I'm negotiating. Her voice was calm. He wants me to secure the family's standing. Well, Blackridge collapsing doesn't help anyone. He'll see the logic. And what will he want in return? Does it matter? Yes. Adrian stood. I won't put you in his debt. Won't give him leverage over you. He already has leverage. He's my father. He's a man who treated you as a commodity. I won't... He stopped, hearing his own words. I won't let him do to you what I did to you. Eliza's expression softened. That's different. Is it? You changed. You chose me. She touched his face gently. He never will. But that doesn't mean I can't use him to protect what we've built. Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to find another way, but the numbers didn't lie. If you do this, he said quietly, you negotiate. Hard. No blank checks. No undefined favors. Everything in writing. I know how to negotiate. You've been teaching me for months. I've been learning from you for months. Then we'll both negotiate. She smiled. Partners, remember? Partners, he agreed reluctantly. Eliza wrote to her father that evening. The letter was a masterpiece of calculated persuasion. She laid out Blackridge's situation, the potential for growth, the benefits to the Rowan family name of being associated with a successful estate. She asked for £3,000 as an investment, to be repaid over 10 years with modest interest. Then she waited. The response came 2 weeks later. Her father agreed, but his terms were worse than Adrian had feared. He wants the money repaid in 5 years, not 10, Eliza said, reading the letter. And he wants a seat on any estate decisions involving major expenditures, plus visiting rights, minimum twice yearly. He wants control. He wants assurance his investment won't disappear. She set down the letter. It's actually not unreasonable from a business perspective. From a business perspective, maybe. From a family perspective, it's manipulation. I know. Eliza's voice was tired. But it's also our only option, unless you've found £3,000 in the last 2 weeks. He hadn't. They argued for 3 days. Adrian hated the terms, hated giving Eliza's father any foothold in their lives, hated that they were desperate enough to consider it, but the alternative was losing Blackridge entirely. On the third night, Eliza found him in his study, staring at ledgers that refused to balance. I'm accepting his offer, she said. Adrian looked up. Eliza, not because I want to, because we need to. She sat across from him. You taught me that survival sometimes requires hard choices. This is one of them. I don't want you to have to make this choice. I know, but it's mine to make, and I'm making it. Her voice was firm. We'll deal with my father. We'll manage his visits and his oversight and whatever else he throws at us. But we'll do it together, and we'll survive it. What if he tries to control you? Then I'll remind him that I'm the Duchess of Blackridge, that I saved this estate once already, that I don't answer to him anymore. She leaned forward. I'm not the girl he sold, Adrian. I'm not afraid of him. Not anymore. Adrian looked at this woman, his wife, his partner, the person who'd transformed his entire world, and felt something shift. She wasn't asking his permission. She was telling him what she'd decided, and she was right. Okay, he said. We'll accept his terms. You're sure? No, but I trust you. He took her hand. If you think we can manage this, then we can. Eliza squeezed his fingers. We can, I promise. She wrote back that night, accepting her father's terms. The money arrived 3 weeks later. Adrian paid the creditor immediately, securing Blackridge's future for the first time in years. Then they prepared for the inevitable. Her father arrived in December, bringing winter with him. Edward Rowan was exactly what Adrian expected. Middle-aged, pompous, with the air of a man who'd never been told no in his life. He examined Blackridge like he was inspecting livestock. Needs work, was his assessment of the manor. It's had work, Eliza said calmly. We've made significant improvements over the last year. Significant for what? It's still half empty. Half the windows need replacing. He turned to Adrian. I expected better management, Your Grace. Adrian bit back his first response. We've prioritized structural repairs and tenant welfare over aesthetic improvements. The estate is profitable for the first time in 3 years. Profitable? Edward laughed. You're barely breaking even. Which is better than the alternative. The alternative is what I'm preventing with my investment. Eliza stepped forward. Father, we appreciate your investment, but Adrian has worked very hard to stabilize Blackridge. Your criticism isn't helpful. Edward looked at his daughter like he was seeing her for the first time. You've gotten bold. I've gotten competent. There's a difference. Competence doesn't excuse disrespect. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm being honest. Eliza's voice was steel. You wanted assurance your investment was sound. It is.
The estate is improving. We have plans for continued growth. But if you came here expecting to find failure, you'll be disappointed. Father and daughter stared at each other. Adrian watched, fascinated. This was not the terrified girl who'd arrived at Blackridge a year ago. This was someone who'd survived hell and come out stronger. Finally, Edward nodded slowly. Show me the ledgers.
They spent the next 3 days going over every detail of the estate's finances. Edward questioned everything, challenged decisions, demanded justifications for expenditures, but he couldn't argue with the results. The estate was improving, measurably, objectively, and Eliza had been the driving force behind most of it. On the 4th day, Edward called them to the study. "I've reviewed your management," he said formally. "It's adequate." "High praise," Adrian muttered. Eliza kicked him under the table. Edward continued. "I'm satisfied that my investment is secure. However, I have concerns about succession." Here it was. "You lost a child," Edward said bluntly. "Are you trying again?" Eliza's face went carefully blank. "That's not your concern." "It's absolutely my concern. I didn't invest £3,000 to have the estate passed to some distant cousin. The estate will pass to whomever Adrian and I decide," Eliza interrupted. "That decision is ours, not yours. You're my daughter. I'm the Duchess of Blackridge, and you will respect that." Her voice was ice. "You gave up the right to dictate my life when you sold me for £200 and a promise. This investment doesn't change that." Edward's face flushed. "You ungrateful—" "Careful," Adrian said quietly. "You're speaking to my wife." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Edward looked between them, seeing, perhaps for the first time, that they were united, that Eliza wasn't the pliable daughter he remembered. "I meant no offense," he said stiffly. "Yes, you did." Eliza stood. "But I'm choosing to be gracious. You may visit Blackridge as outlined in our agreement. You may review our financial decisions, but you will not question our personal choices. Are we clear?" "Crystal." "Good. Then I believe we're done here." She left. Adrian and Edward sat in awkward silence. "Your wife has changed," Edward said finally. "Yes." "You did that?" "I nearly destroyed her. She rebuilt herself." Adrian met the older man's eyes. "Everything good in her is despite me, not because of me." Edward studied him. "You love her?" "More than anything." "Then why no heir?" Adrian debated lying, then decided the truth was simpler. "We nearly lost her during the first pregnancy. We're waiting, making sure she's strong enough before we try again." He leaned forward. "And if she's never strong enough, we'll find another way, because her life matters more than any bloodline." Edward looked genuinely surprised. "You'd really forego an heir?" Without hesitation. "That's unusual for a duke." "I'm an unusual duke." Edward laughed despite himself. "Clearly, my daughter chose better than I expected." "Your daughter deserved better than you gave her." "Yes?" "She did." Edward stood. "I'll leave tomorrow, but I'll return in 6 months, as agreed. Try not to burn the place down before then." "No promises." After Edward left, Adrian found Eliza in the conservatory. She was sitting among her roses, not working, just existing. "You were magnificent," he said. She looked up, surprised. "Was I?" "You stood up to him, set boundaries, made it clear you weren't the same girl he sold." "I'm not that girl anymore." Eliza touched a bloom gently. "She died somewhere between the wedding and the miscarriage. This version survived." "I like this version." "So do I," she smiled. "Even if she's sometimes tired and angry and still figuring things out." Especially because of that. Adrian sat beside her, and they watched winter sun filter through glass, painting everything gold. "Do you think we'll have children?" Eliza asked quietly. "Do you want to?" "I don't know, sometimes." She looked at him. "Would you be disappointed if we didn't?" "Not even slightly." "Liar." "I'm serious." He took her hand. "I spent 3 years thinking an heir was the most important thing, that continuing the bloodline justified any sacrifice. But I was wrong. The most important thing is sitting right here." "That's very romantic." "I'm a romantic now, hadn't you heard?" She laughed. "When did that happen?" "When I stopped being an idiot." "You keep saying that, but you're still an idiot sometimes." "Fair point." They sat together until the sun faded, talking about futures that didn't require heirs or bloodlines or anything except choosing each other. Spring came again, a full year since Eliza had arrived at Blackridge. The estate bloomed like it hadn't in decades. Gardens overflowed. Tenant cottages gleamed with fresh paint. The school Eliza had proposed opened with 15 students and a teacher from the village. Everything they'd fought for was taking root. One morning, Eliza woke feeling strange. Not sick exactly, just different. She ignored it for a week, then 2. Then she couldn't ignore it anymore. "I need to see Dr. Whitmore," she told Adrian. He looked up from his breakfast, immediately concerned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I don't think, just I need to see him." Adrian insisted on coming with her. Dr. Whitmore examined her thoroughly. Then he sat back, his expression carefully neutral. "Your Grace, you're pregnant." The words hit like a physical blow. Eliza stared at him. "I can't be. We've been careful." Apparently not careful enough. The physician smiled gently. "You're about 6 weeks along." Adrian gripped her hand. "Is she healthy enough? After last time?" "She's much stronger now. Proper weight. No signs of malnutrition. If she takes care, rests properly, eats well, doesn't overwork, the pregnancy has excellent chances. And if she doesn't, then we're back where we started." "Doctor." Whitmore's voice was firm. "This is your choice, Your Grace. Both of yours. But if you proceed, you must do it carefully." After he left, Eliza and Adrian sat in silence. "What do you want to do?" Adrian asked finally. "I don't know." Eliza touched her stomach wonderingly. "I'm terrified." "So am I." "What if it happens again? What if I'm not strong enough?" "Then we'll face it, together." He pulled her close. "But Eliza, you don't have to do this. We can find other options. We can—" "I want to try." The words surprised her as much as him. "Are you sure?" Adrian asked. "No, but I want to try anyway." She looked at him. "Not for the estate. Not for your father or mine. For us. Because maybe we could be good at this. We'd be terrible at this. Probably, but we'd be terrible together." Adrian laughed despite himself. "That's the worst sales pitch for parenthood I've ever heard." "It's honest." "It is." He kissed her gently. "Okay, we try, but carefully. No overworking, no stress. If at any point it becomes dangerous, we stop." "I know." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not ready to die for this, but I'm willing to try for it. That's all I ask." The pregnancy was different this time. Adrian was different. He enforced rest periods, monitored her eating, physically carried her away from work when she pushed too hard. Eliza fought him at first, then realized he was right. "I hate this," she complained one afternoon. "I feel useless." "You're growing a human. That's the opposite of useless." "I'm sitting on a settee reading novels." "You're resting, like the physician ordered." Adrian sat beside her. "And you're still managing half the estate from that settee, so don't pretend you're idle." She smiled despite herself. "Fair point." The county watched with interest. News of the pregnancy spread quickly. Some people were supportive. Others waited to see if she'd fail again. Adrian didn't care about any of them. He cared about Eliza, about keeping her healthy, about making sure this time was different. And it was. She had symptoms: nausea, exhaustion, the usual complaints, but nothing like before. No fainting, no fever, no terrifying collapses, just normal pregnancy discomfort. By the 5th month, they started to believe it might actually work. "We should talk about names," Eliza said one evening. They were in the conservatory, Eliza resting on a bench while Adrian pretended to work on estate business. "Do we have to?" "Most people name their children, yes." "Can't we just call it baby until it suggests something better?" "That's terrible." "I'm terrible at this." "You're not." She touched his hand. "You're just scared." "Terrified." "So am I." She looked at him. "But we're doing it anyway. Together. Together." They talked about names and futures, and all the things they'd avoided discussing for months. And slowly, carefully, they started to believe this might actually happen. The birth came in late autumn. Eliza's labor started in the middle of the night, sharp pains that woke them both. Adrian was on his feet immediately. "I'm getting Dr. Whitmore." "Not yet. It's too early. First births take time." Her words cut off as another contraction hit. "I'm getting him now." The physician arrived within the hour. So did the midwife, the nurse, and Mrs. Calloway. They transformed Eliza's room into a birthing ward while Adrian paced outside. Hours passed, then more hours. Adrian counted every minute, every sound from the room, every moment of silence that felt like death. Mrs. Calloway emerged occasionally with updates. "She's doing well. It's progressing normally." "These things take time, Your Grace." Time. He'd spent a year fighting time, fighting to keep Eliza alive long enough to heal, to grow strong, to survive this. And now time was the enemy again. 12 hours into labor, Dr. Whitmore came out. His face was grim. "What's wrong?" Adrian demanded. "The baby is breech. We're trying to turn it, but what? But if we can't, this becomes very dangerous. For both of them." Adrian felt the world tilt. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we may need to make a choice again, between her and the child." "No, not again. Not after everything they'd survived." "Do whatever you need to do," Adrian said, "but save her. Promise me you'll save her." "I'll do everything I can." Dr. Whitmore went back inside. Adrian slumped against the wall, his legs suddenly unable to hold him. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when they were so close. He'd promised to choose her, always. But he'd also promised they'd face this together. Inside the room, Eliza screamed. It was the worst sound Adrian had ever heard. He was on his feet, moving toward the door. Mrs. Calloway blocked him. "You can't go in there." "That's my wife, and she needs the physician focused, not distracted by you." The housekeeper's voice was firm. "Trust her, Your Grace. She's strong. She'll fight." Another scream. Adrian wanted to break down the door, wanted to be with her, wanted to do something other than stand uselessly in a hallway while the woman he loved suffered. But Mrs. Calloway was right. So he waited, and prayed to deities he didn't believe in, and promised every force in the universe that if Eliza survived this, he'd spend the rest of his life earning her. 15 hours into labor, the screaming stopped. Adrian's heart stopped with it. Then, impossibly, a baby cried. The sound was thin and outraged, and the most beautiful thing Adrian had ever heard. The door opened. Dr. Whitmore emerged, bloodied and exhausted. "Congratulations, Your Grace. You have a daughter." Adrian couldn't process the words. "Eliza is alive, exhausted, asking for you." He was through the door before the physician finished speaking. Eliza lay in the bed, pale as death, but breathing. In her arms, wrapped in blankets, was the smallest human Adrian had ever seen. "Adrian," Eliza's voice was hoarse, "come meet your daughter." He crossed the room on numb legs. The baby was red-faced and angry, tiny fists waving. She had dark hair like Eliza's, and when she opened her eyes, they were the same deep brown. "She's perfect," Adrian whispered. "She's loud," Eliza said, but she was smiling, and stubborn, refused to turn the right way for hours. Takes after her mother. Completely. Adrian sat carefully on the edge of the bed. "Are you all right?" "I'm alive. That counts for something." She looked down at their daughter. "We did it." "You did it. I just paced uselessly in the hallway." "You chose me. Again." Her eyes were bright with tears. "When it got dangerous, you told them to save me." "Always. I heard you. Through the door, telling Dr. Whitmore to choose me over the baby if necessary." She touched his face. "You meant it." "Of course I meant it. Most men wouldn't." "I'm not most men." He looked at their daughter, this impossible, perfect thing they'd created. "And this is our family now, however we define it." Eliza started crying in earnest. Adrian held her carefully, mindful of her exhaustion and the baby between them, and felt something click into place. This was what mattered. Not estates or bloodlines or duty. This, the three of them, together. Everything else was just noise. They named her Catherine. Not after Adrian's former fiancée, that woman was long forgotten, but after Eliza's grandmother, a woman she'd loved who'd been the only person in her family to treat her kindly. "Are you sure?" Adrian asked. "I'm sure. She deserves a name with love in it." So Catherine she became. The county congratulated them formally. Some people seemed genuinely pleased. Others looked disappointed that Eliza had survived again. Adrian didn't care. He'd stopped caring what the county thought months ago. What mattered was watching Eliza recover, watching their daughter grow, watching their family become real. It wasn't perfect. Catherine cried constantly. Eliza struggled with exhaustion. Adrian had no idea what he was doing half the time, but they figured it out together. One night, 3 months after the birth, Adrian found Eliza in the nursery. She was holding Catherine, rocking her gently, singing something soft and off-key. He stood in the doorway, watching. "You're staring," Eliza said without turning. "I'm admiring." "Liar. I look terrible." "You look like someone who's kept a tiny human alive for 3 months. That's impressive." She laughed quietly. "We've kept her alive, both of us." "Fair point." Catherine had fallen asleep. Eliza set her carefully in the cradle and turned to Adrian. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For changing. For choosing me. For building this with me." She moved into his arms. "For seeing me. Thank you for surviving me. We survived each other." "We did." They stood together in the darkness, listening to their daughter breathe, and Adrian felt complete for the first time in his life, not because everything was perfect, but because it was real. And real was enough. Years passed. Blackridge thrived under their joint management. Eliza's school expanded. The tenants prospered. The estate became known throughout the county for its progressive practices and efficient management. They had 2 more children, a son named Thomas and another daughter called Margaret. Adrian's fear never fully disappeared. Every pregnancy, every illness, every moment of danger brought it roaring back. But Eliza was strong, stronger than he'd ever imagined, and together they built something remarkable. Not just an estate, a family, a partnership, a life. On their 10th anniversary, Adrian found Eliza in the conservatory. She was older now. There were lines around her eyes, silver threading through her dark hair. She'd never looked more beautiful. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "The girl I used to be. The one who arrived here terrified and alone." She was braver than she knew. She was desperate. There's a difference. Eliza looked at him. But she survived. We both did. Against all odds. Against all odds, she agreed. They stood among the roses she'd saved a decade ago, blooming wild now, filling the space with color and life. "Do you regret it?" Adrian asked. "Any of it?" Eliza considered. "I regret the pain, the fear, the months of feeling like I was dying just to prove I mattered." "I'm sorry. Let me finish." She touched his face. "I regret those things. But I don't regret this, us, what we built from the ashes of that contract marriage." She smiled. "You were a terrible husband." "I was. You're better now." "I'm trying." "You're succeeding." She kissed him gently. "We both are." Outside, their children were playing in the garden. Mrs. Calloway was scolding someone. The estate hummed with life. Everything they'd fought for. Everything they'd survived. "I love you," Adrian said. "I know. You tell me every day." "I'm going to keep telling you for the rest of our lives." "Good. I'm going to keep believing you. Even better." They stood together in the space Eliza had brought back to life, surrounded by proof that broken things could heal if given time and care and stubborn, relentless hope. And Adrian understood, finally, what survival actually meant. Not just not dying, but building something worth living for, with someone worth living with. Together. Always together.